Please take your seat.
We're getting started, please.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. Let's take a moment to please silence your cell phones or electronic devices so we don't have anything going off during the hearing. My name is Donna Marie Collins, and I am the hearing examiner that will be presiding over this morning's remand hearing. The date is May 30th, 2023, and today's hearing is to reconsider a request to amend the development parameters of an approved residential plan development. My task today as the hearing examiner is to accept testimony and evidence and prepare a revised recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. My recommendation will evaluate any revised information that we've received today, any new testimony or evidence that's provided by staff and the applicant for consistency with the LEED plan and the Land Development Code and the board's directives. If you completed a public participation form in the past, it is not necessary for you to complete another one. If you have not participated in a prior hearing on this case, then please do fill out a public participation form. If there's anybody here that wasn't here before, the order of the proceedings is applicant will go first. They'll make their presentation. They may have testimony of more than one witness. I may have questions of them. Staff may have questions of them. And then we will go to the staff planner that prepared the revised staff report. Their testimony may include one or more witnesses as well. I may have questions of them. And then at the conclusion of their presentation, I will open up the floor to members of the public that wish to put comments on the record. I do not wish to discourage testimony today from the public. There may be revisions proposed by the applicant, and my only wish is that you direct your comments to the revised application. If there are no significant revisions to the application and you want to stand by your original testimony regarding the request, you can just say that on the podium and we'll make a note of that. As you know, all testimony and evidence that we accept during these hearings must be taken in under oath. So I'd like to administer the oath to everyone in the room at one time now before we start the proceeding. If you plan on speaking during this case and come to the podium, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you enter into the record will be the truth? Thank you very much. I'm ready to begin.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For your record, Richard Aiken of Henderson Franklin here this morning on behalf of the applicant. I have here with me this morning our project team, who you've already heard from once. From Baracco and Associates, I have Jennifer Sapin and Carl Baracco. Both of them you'll hear from today. I also have Jesse Sorrells from Passarella and Associates and Ted Treesh from TR Transportation Consultants. Mr. Sorrells and Mr. Treesh don't have an affirmative presentation, but they are here if you have any questions from them this morning. I have a couple of, I guess, just exhibits that I'd like to provide you with early on here, and Ms. Sapin will help me out. So I do have a copy of our PowerPoint presentation. I also have, and I'll note as I go through this, that we made a couple of changes to the original site plan, and they were provided in our response that we provided on April 28th. So we have a copy of the full-size master concept plan, which is the original master concept plan with the changes for your review as well. And then I also have a copy of as you can see from our response, we submitted an alternative site plan that tried to take into consideration the items raised by staff in their supplemental staff report. So I have a full-size master concept plan of the alternative site plan, which Ms. Sapin has provided you as well.
Conditions?
No.
Okay, so I have just one. Here comes the alternative.
That's a revision to the original.
So is this a revised revision 1 and that's revision 2?
Yes, that's correct. So revision 1 is it's the original site plan with the conveyance continuing to go around the perimeter, but there are revisions to certain of the lot sizes within that. The second revision is the alternative site plan, as we're calling it, that basically leaves the conveyance ditch running where it currently runs.
Okay, thank you. I don't have exhibit markers with me up here, so I'm just going to write the alternative master concept plan, alternative 1 keeps the central conveyance. So I'll mark that as applicant exhibit 1 for this hearing.
Okay.
And then master concept plan, sheet 2 will be exhibit 2. That's the one that retains the redirected drainage conveyance
Yes, thank you.
to the west side of the project. And then your PowerPoint will be exhibit 3.
Thank you. And I don't know if I need to, for the purposes of the record, make our response that we submitted on April 28th as part of an exhibit here today. I
Yes,
think
I'll make that exhibit. I'll make that exhibit 4, only because I already numbered the other ones.
Okay, thank you. And I believe the copy that I handed you also has all of the exhibits that were originally submitted with that.
Yes. I'm ready.
All right, thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. So good morning once again. As you know, the Board of County Commissioners remanded this matter to the hearing examiner for consideration of 4 things, really. Policy 5.1.5 of the Lee Plan, lot sizes, lot dimensions, and property development regulations. Staff prepared a supplemental report following the remand on March 29th of 2023 in there, and I'll walk through what staff discusses in their supplemental response in a minute, but they made several proposed changes. The applicant submitted a response on April 28th that basically responded directly to the supplemental staff report and made some additional proposed changes as well. So staff's supplemental report compares the project to the Buckingham 345 project, which is a project that was approved by the Lee County Board of County Commissioners in April of 2021. The staff report does not re-examine the project, the original master concept plan in this case, for compatibility with the issues of concern raised by the board. It also does not change any conclusions of the initial staff report. Instead, it basically compares this project to the Buckingham 345 project and recommends larger lot sizes around the perimeter and in other locations in order to do what the staff calls provide additional assurances of compatibility. There are some similarities between this project and the Buckingham 345 project, and you'll hear about those a little bit further in detail. The Buckingham 345 project, like this project, is adjacent to the Rural Community Preserve Future Land Use category. Like this project, neither the Buckingham 345 nor this one is in the Rural Community Preserve. There are also some differences between the Buckingham 345 project and this one that you'll hear about. First of all, Buckingham 345 requested and received approval for a comprehensive plan amendment when it went through its rezoning process. It changed the density therein from 2 units an acre to 3 units an acre. As you know, and as you heard the first time around in this matter, we're not asking for a comprehensive plan amendment. We're staying within the standard density that's allowed by the sub-outlying suburban future land use category of 2 units per acre, which is what's applied to this property since the inception of the Lee Plan. That's one primary difference. Another difference is that the Buckingham 345 plan has significantly less buffers around the outside of the project compared to what was proposed in the original master concept plan in this matter. Ms. Sapin will go through and discuss that in further detail. The Buckingham 345 project also has 0 lot line products, 2 family attached products, and townhomes within that development. We have none of those here in the Orange River project. This is just a single family residential development. That's what the request is for, and it's already got an existing approval for that as well. So there are some differences between those two. Applicant submitted its response on April 28th of 2023. Therein we did a couple of things. First of all, we analyzed the issues that were raised by the board, okay, the areas of remand. We went through those areas. We also analyzed the issues that were raised in the supplemental staff report. We responded directly to what staff raised about the Buckingham 345 project. We compared the lot sizes, the lot dimensions, and the property development regulations in the Buckingham 345 project with this project. We talked about the buffers and brought those into consideration of that discussion relative to the 2 projects. We also made a change, as you've seen from the exhibit that we provided this morning, to the existing master concept plan with the conveyance going around the outside. We made a change to that to change some of the internal lot sizes to address some of the staff's concerns with regard to the original master concept plan. We also provided an alternative master concept plan, which was in direct response to what staff proposed as part of the, when comparing it to the Buckingham 345 project. That alternative site plan, as you've heard, does a couple of things. It leaves the conveyance ditch where it is. Instead of moving it around the perimeter, it leaves it going basically right through, I'll call it the middle, but the middle of the property. This morning here today, what you're going to hear is we're going to first discuss the original plan in light of the supplemental staff report and the issues on remand by the board. It's our position that the original plan remains consistent with the Lee County Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan, as was the original conclusion of staff and the hearing examiner. We don't believe that there's been any evidence submitted as part of the supplemental staff report or that there will be any today to change that conclusion. We will also discuss the original plan in light of staff's recommendations and the changes that we proposed to that plan. Next, we're going to turn to and discuss the alternative plan that we've submitted. That plan, as I mentioned, was submitted in direct response to the supplemental staff report. For clarity, we're not going to withdraw our original plan. We've just got two alternative master concept plans that we're providing. Both accommodate 258 dwelling units. They are different, but they both accommodate the same number of dwelling units. The alternative plan does several things. I told you about the drainage conveyance. You're also going to hear that the wetlands impacts in the alternative plan, there are no wetlands impacts. In the original plan, there were no permanent wetlands impacts, but there were some temporary wetlands impacts. Those have been eliminated by leaving the conveyance where it is. You will also hear that the alternative plan is going to provide the opportunity to redesign the conveyance because there were some concerns about capacity. We heard that from some of the residents. It's going to, so even though we're not moving it, still by leaving it where it is, it will still provide the opportunity to redesign that conveyance and ensure that there is existing capacity, and Mr. Baracco will talk about that. In addition, and I think most importantly, the alternative plan creates larger lots around the perimeter and in the interior in order to try to meet staff's recommendations regarding the Buckingham 345 project. So it has larger outside lots, less than what they are under the existing plan, the approved plan that we have today with regard to the project, but larger than what was in the original application. And finally, with regard, while I said both plans accommodate 258 dwelling units, with regard to the alternative plan, we've spoken to staff and mentioned this. We are willing to offer here today that we will decrease the density on the alternative plan only from 258 units down to 248 units. And so for reference, the original approval is 160 units. The request was for 258, so we're asking for 98 additional dwelling units. So we're giving up a little bit more than 10% of the request.
So alternative plan proposes 248 units instead of 258.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Sapin, who will go through, and she's first going to begin by going through the original plan and then the subsequent plan, unless you have any other questions of me before I sit down.
No, I'm ready for Ms. Sapin.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Jennifer Sapin. I'm an AICP certified land planner with Baracco & Associates. So as Richard outlined, I'm going to first go over the original master concept plan, the changes that we're proposing to that, which include some lot dimension changes, review the compatibility and consistency with surrounding properties, and a closer look at Buckingham 345, and then I'll switch to the alternate master concept plan, specifics of that plan, and the consistency with the comprehensive plan of that plan. So looking first at the proposed development regulations for the original master concept plan with the conveyance around the outside. The applicant is proposing to increase lot size and lot depth. You see here it's an increase of lot size of 3% and a lot depth increase of 30%. We are also creating an R2 category, which you can see those are very large lots with large setbacks. The R2 category is only shown in the far southwest corner here. You can see that's where the lots abut Homestead Lane. That's where the conveyance does not provide that additional buffering. So those lots then will be increased. That creates the 150-foot building setback. That's a combination of the principal setback of 130 feet and then the landscape buffer of 30 feet for 160 to principal and 150 to the accessory setback. Looking at the surrounding area, there are similar lot sizes and dimensions in the existing area. The dashed line around the property shows an area of 1,500 feet around the property. Within that 1,500 feet, you can see that there are 5 lots that have very similar sizes to those proposed by this RPD. None of these, as you can see in the graphic here, none of them meet each of the size criteria, but some of the size criteria that exist there are smaller than what we're proposing with this RPD. 2 lots have equal lot width of 50 feet as proposed. 3 lots have less lot depth. You can see here in the table, a lot depth exists of 80 feet, whereas our proposed lot depth, as amended, would be 130 feet. And there are 2 lots with less lot area. Now, these are not new lots. These lots were first created, first year that the homes were on the tax roll was in 1954. And you can see here there are several decades where that type of development has continued to exist in this area. Looking then at the definition of compatibility as defined by the Land Development Code, the emphasis here is on similarity or reciprocity of characteristics. In similarity, there are existing single-family uses in this area, and there are proposed single-family uses. There are smaller lots in this area that abut larger lots, similar to the proposed request. And the proposed lot sizes are similar, if not smaller, than those proposed. So similarity is an easy word. Reciprocity, I wanted to look a little bit deeper into that. That word is not defined in the Land Development Code. However, you can see a definition here from Britannica. It specifically is to allow each other to have the same rights. So this applies to this request because, as you can see, the 5 existing lots in this area, the RPD requests to have the same rights as those that have existed since the 1950s. Next, I want to look at the land allocation of the project. This graphic shows theoretical extensions of the lot lines. So this looks at the perimeter. There's 73 lots around the perimeter of the project. Theoretically, if those lot lines were extended and the flowway were included within those lots would be way larger than our property development regulations seem to indicate. So in reality, the average lot there would be over 16,000 square foot. You can see there are irregular shaped lots. Compared to the Buckingham 345 project, where the lot size is 13,600, and those are very square lots, so those would be the lot sizes of Buckingham 345. Now, again, this is not to suggest that the flowway be part of the lots. This is really just a demonstration to look at land allocation in a comparison to the Buckingham 345 and the proposed design. The flowway conveyance will be platted and part of the common element, a unified maintenance by Lee County / the HOA. So this is different from the approved plan or the Buckingham 35 in that this additional lot depth, in quotes, that flowway, it would be maintained in a natural system as opposed to Buckingham 345 and the approved plan, where that lot depth would be part of a private lot, likely mowed and fertilized. So this goes towards the goals of cleaner waters that this plan really does a good job in achieving. I just wanted to zoom in a little closer so you could see how this graphic works. Around the perimeter, the land area for the lots, I did not include the 30-foot buffer in that. So the 30-foot buffer around the perimeter, keeping in mind that is planted with 10 trees per 100 linear feet and a double staggered hedge with a hedge a little bit higher than is typically required for buffers. And then inside the flowway, there is the transitional grading edge, which has pine trees, maples, cypress, and then as you get into the more wetland plants within the flowway. Switching to Buckingham 345, on the left side of the graphic is a typical lot detail of what would be allowed for the R3 category. The R3 category is in the southern boundary of Buckingham 345, so those are the lots that abut the rural community preserve. Applying the property development regulations approved by that project with 55% lot coverage and the setbacks, this would allow a ground floor square footage of 7,350 for the home. So to understand what that size of a home would look like, I found a photo of a home in Cape Coral, similar size as shown here. This home is a little bit smaller than what would be allowed in Buckingham 345. The point here is to show that a larger lot does not necessarily equal more rural character. There's several elements of site design as well as dimensional criteria. And in this case, the 55% lot coverage creates a very large home, or the possibility for one. Looking at Buckingham 345, and again, this is the southern boundary where it abuts the rural community preserve. The R3 are those linear lots along the southern boundary. So looking at the setbacks there to the R3 category, those are the larger lots. The setback to the home would be 75 feet. And then looking at the R1, where R1 here, those lots are on the dead ends, so they're perpendicular to the southern boundary. That setback would be 90 feet. And of course, keeping in mind that the proposed project, the proposed RPD, has a perimeter setback of 150 to 170 feet. So it's way well in excess to what actually will occur in Buckingham 345 adjacent to the rural community preserve. So looking at one of the remand considerations, which was policy 5.1.5, what we're looking at is protecting future residential areas. And this is related to uses and incompatible uses. So this policy is in place to protect residential uses from potentially incompatible uses. And again, uses is the key here. The Land Development Code does create buffers to protect against potentially incompatible uses. When you look at the Land Development Code, there are no buffers required between single family and single family. So therefore, the Land Development Code finds that those two uses are inherently compatible and could exist without any buffering. Alternatively, we are proposing a very large buffer around the perimeter of the project. Policy 5.1.5 states that conditions are attached to minimize or eliminate the potential impacts. So our proposed conditions would be the 150 to 170 foot buffer, where none is required by Land Development Code. This buffer consists of 20.7 acres, 732 trees, and close to 10,000 shrubs and littoral plants. Would you like to go over any questions on that plan before I switch over? Okay, so switching now to the alternate site plan. So as you can see, there's no changes to access. There are no wetland impacts. As Richard said, there was a temporary wetland impact in the previous plan. That's been eliminated. There's no relocation of the north-south pass-through conveyance, but the easement width has been increased. Previously, it was 30 feet, and if you recall, there was some problem with the functionality of the cross-section approved in the previous plan. Expanding this easement to 60 feet will allow maintenance and allow that cross-section to be realized, and Carl will go through that when he gets up here. So we have created an R2 category similar to Buckingham 345 and have provided those lots around the exterior of the project. You can see the lot size here is large with 13,600 square foot lots. We've placed those lots, there are two areas to the north and to the south where the back of the lots abut the perimeter. The other two areas along Staley Road and along Orange River, those larger lots are on the other side of a secondary road. The buffers around the project, we are maintaining the 30 foot as previously approved with the previous approval as our first master concept plan. And then we have added a 15-foot type D buffer where the roadways abut one another. And the front of the houses face towards Staley Road and Orange River. I think this is an interesting feature of this plan. When you look at the back of homes, especially homes with pool enclosures, sometimes those can get very bulky and boxy. The front of homes, however, are usually more, bless you, architecturally ornate, undulate in and out more opportunities for landscaping. So we feel that these two roads abutting Staley and Orange River will provide a little more visual harmony and interest for residents traveling down the road. I also wanted to point out the buffers along Staley Road, the southwest corner of the site. We have extended a 100-foot upland strip. So on Staley Road, only half of the project will have created buffers. The southern half of the buffers along Staley will be existing buffers, and existing native vegetation. I also want to put the north side of Staley Road as well as the interface with Orange River. Because of the road, the way it curves in, there's little pockets of open space. So it is not as linear as the previously approved plan. One deviation is requested with this alternate plan. This is to lake excavation setback. This is a duplicate deviation that was supported by staff. The lake is in the same location. The details are the same. The lake abuts power lines and a substation, and a fence surrounds the substation. And the buffer that is proposed there, none is required. Those elements will all protect against safety, health, and welfare. And then the development is enhanced by allowing additional excavation for more on-site fill material. The alternate plan is consistent with the Lee County Comprehensive Plan, first looking at policy 1.1.11, sub-outlying suburban. The proposed request is a low-density residential project and was within the 2 units per acre allowed by sub-outlying suburban, and no industrial land uses are proposed. The plan is consistent with Objective 2.2 and Policy 5.1.2. As with the original plan, public facilities exist to serve this plan as well as the alternate plan as well as the original plan. And it is within the Lee County Future Service Area, maps 4A and 4B in the Lee plan. And no hazards or restraints exist within the property, and it's not within a flood zone. Looking again at policy 5.1.5, but with this alternate plan, again, the use is compatible because the use is the same as surrounding areas. The buffers proposed far exceed that required by the Land Development Code. And in this alternate plan, the required buffer trees would only be 59, and the provided buffer trees are up to 434. The proposed buffer exceeds the requirements for industrial and intense abutting commercial. So the buffer that we are proposing for this single-family use is greater than that would be required for an industrial or an intense commercial use. There's several objectives and policies within Goal 20, the Buckingham Community Plan. I wanted to show that we have looked at every policy within the Buckingham Community Plan, and I've noted here the ones that I found were not applicable to the requested. Do you want me to go through the not applicable or move on to the ones that are?
I don't need to hear about the ones that are inapplicable, no.
So starting with policy 20.1.5 of the Buckingham Plan, which encourages clustering and RPD zoning. RPD zoning is requested, and the buildings are located 100 feet from the property boundary, and the project is a minimum of 10 acres, meeting this clustering policy. Policy 20.1.6 discuss transitions, where buffers will be established for projects adjacent to the rural community preserve. We are providing larger lots, which create a transition. This is very similar to the suggested Buckingham 345 project. And the proposed buffers are greater than the approved plan, and they far exceed those required by the Land Development Code. The next two policies, 20.3.1 and 3.2, are both related to extension of sewer and water. And as you can see on the maps here, the subject property is within both of those service areas, and sufficient capacity is available to serve the site. Policy 20.3.3, install underground utilities. Underground utilities will be installed, and this is a large development as it qualifies by the Land Development Code definition of 2 or more acres of impervious or a project over 10 acres. Policy 20.3.5, seeking to provide appropriate separation, buffering, environmental protection, landscaping, and it looks at historical rural character. So we are providing a 100-foot building setback, enhanced buffers, and preserve buffer, no wetland impacts, and then noting the historical rural character, keeping in mind that the historical rural character here within 1,500 feet of the property are single-family sites of similar sizes since 1954. Outdoor lighting, reduce light pollution and light trespass. It'll be in accordance with Lee County's dark skies. And exotics will be removed in accordance with policy 20.5.3. In accordance with 53.1.8, the cost of new potable water, the water will be extended by the developer and impact fees will be paid as appropriate. In consistency with policy 61.3.6, an ERP will be required and the HOA will maintain the service water management system. This creates that program and maintenance system that this policy seeks to provide. Runoff will be routed through retention and detention areas in accordance with policy 61.3.11 through on-site lakes that will capture the surface water and then outfall into the on-site wetland. Policy 77.3 seeks visual relief and buffering to adjacent uses and or existing rights-of-way. We are buffering the right-of-way as well as existing and adjacent uses. Policies 135.1.9 and 158.1.9 is where the county is seeking a mix of residential types throughout the county and a diverse mix of housing types and prices. This proposed RPD will provide a mix of residential housing types in this portion of the county. I believe, yes, that concludes my presentation unless you have any questions for me.
I just want a clarification. The master concept plan that retains the rerouted drainage ditch through the environmental area, that is essentially the same as your original plan, except that you illustrated how extending the lots to the property line through these preserve areas achieves a greater setback and larger lot size, correct?
There is one change to the
Well, the change in the
southwest corner.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
But I'm talking about the bulk of the remainder.
That was it. There were changes to the property development regulations, but that will just show up in that table. The master concept plan is the same other than the R2 area.
Right, so you were able to add, what was it, 200 square feet to the lot size?
We shifted that road up, making the lake smaller. Where is it? Right here. So this road before used to curve down, and that road now is higher, or to the north, which shrunk this lake back here just slightly.
All right, but the other lots also increased in size under your proposal, right?
Correct. And what that was is that this plan will accommodate those higher numbers. When we sat down and did the math and really crunched the numbers, we just could make them slightly larger and keep the same plan.
So the minimum lot size will be 6,700 square feet. The minimum lot depth will be 130 feet.
That's correct.
And that is without extending it to the property line through the wetland areas.
That's correct.
And
yeah.
the revised conveyance.
That's correct.
And the lot widths remain at 50,
Correct.
and the side setbacks remain at 5.
Correct.
And then when we move to the single-family R2 area, which is in the lower corner, we have a minimum lot size of 13,600. So fewer lots will be able to be permitted there, and that's where you gain you remove 10.
The 10-unit reduction is on the alternate plan. So basically, the alternate plan, the reduction is possible in part. The costs of building that flowway around the perimeter and landscaping it is extremely expensive. So the alternate plan without the really, really enhanced landscaping and that conveyance system and the maintenance program of that system, the developer then is able to reduce the density.
Okay, thank you. I'm ready for Mr. Baracco's testimony. morning.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. Carl Baraka for the record. I'm going to review the pass-through conveyance of the alternate site plan. The pass-through conveyance for the alternate site plan is essentially the same as the current master concept plan with one change, and that is the section and the width. As you've heard, and shown in the survey, there's an existing 30-foot drainage easement. The current master concept plan calls for a 40-foot flowway with an associated section. And the alternate proposed site plan provides a 60-foot flowway with an associated section. So what I'm going to do is review those sections. As you'll see in the top, that is the section from the approved MCP. It shows the 40-foot flowway, and it shows elevations and widths. The problem with this section is that if you use the elevation of 3.25 at the bottom of the flowway and the elevation of 20.5 at the top of the flowway, and the slope shown as 3.5 feet horizontal to 1 foot vertical, that doesn't fit within the 12.5 feet provided. That requires about 25 feet. So in order to provide for what I believe was the intent is the 60-foot proposed flowway, and you'll see that there's now 23.5 feet provided for the slopes, and essentially that allows that section that was originally intended to fit within the flowway. So in conclusion, the alternate master concept plan provides for similar conveyance as the current site plan, but with adequate dimensions so that it can actually physically be built. And I would like to point out, we did speak about the Southern Lee County Flood Mitigation Plan in our original hearing, and for that to be implemented, which I believe that study was done after the original section was approved. For that to ever be implemented, I don't believe the 40 feet would be adequate, so the 60 feet would be very instrumental in allowing that mitigation plan to proceed if it ever comes to fruition.
Okay, so would this involve the conveyance of a larger easement to the county?
Yes, the difference between existing 30 feet, the master concept plan said a 40-foot flowway. I have to assume they intended it to be a drainage easement. So again, we're talking about a 60-foot flowway, which would require a 60-foot drainage easement. So going from an existing 30-foot drainage easement to a proposed 60-foot drainage easement.
Okay, so to the extent that lots will back up on this area under the proposed site plan, tell me how that works exactly.
Okay, that's it. So we've actually provided a larger buffer, and if you look at the
Section?
So starting in the center, you'll see the existing 30-foot drainage easement, and then the 40-foot drainage easement in the current plan, and then 60 feet above that. Actually, it's
So basically what happens is you've got backyards that potentially could be mowed to the top of the bank? Is that?
yes, the rear yards would stop short of the easement or at the easement line, but the intent is that there would be 60 feet for a drainage easement that would be unencumbered and could be used for drainage.
Okay, and then the county would have the option of improving that existing drainage way within the parameters of the revised width? Because right now, the existing drainage way doesn't comply with those parameters with regard to the slopes and everything.
Right, the existing conveyance is an old conveyance. It was done many years before the study was done and really any modern study of the drainage. So this concept is based upon the existing concept plan and the study that was done by Lee County, which again was a Southern Lee County flood mitigation plan.
Right, but that would be the county's responsibility to make those improvements within the easement area, correct? The project isn't going to redesign that drainage way, are they?
I think the intent is that if and when the project is built, the conveyance would be constructed with the project. It would still be a county facility and maintained by the county, but it would be constructed at the time of the infrastructure for the subdivision.
Okay, so then once the construction is complete, it would then be the responsibility of the county to maintain it going forward?
Yes, and again, I believe that's what was considered in the existing zoning, and I think that's what's contemplated with this, is that they're treated exactly the same way. In essence, we're just providing the width required to implement that original concept.
Okay. And are there revised conditions associated with this, or do the existing conditions still apply? Do you know? Richard's coming forward.
Yes, Madam Hearing Examiner, I do have a copy of it. We did do a strike-through underline of the conditions. I did provide that to staff.
Okay, so why don't we save that for when you were going to present it anyway in your presentation, and we'll let Carl finish and let your presentation take its natural course?
Well, and I think we're kind of getting down to the end of our presentation. So with regard to the conditions, and I did provide it to Mr. Badamshin and we discussed it with staff last week, the revised conditions. I don't know that staff had any comment on them, but I do have a copy of revised.
Yes, I'll take them. I haven't received, I think, a 48-hour letter from staff in this case, so I assume we'll find out shortly. Thank you. This will be applicant Exhibit 5. And this would apply only to the alternative master concept plan?
For the record, Jennifer Sapin, that's correct. It would apply only to the alternative master concept plan. You'll note condition 1 includes a reduction of density request to 248 units. Conditions 2B creates 2 different lot sizes, interior versus the perimeter lot sizes. The interior lot sizes remain the same as the first site plan that was proposed, the revised 6,700 square foot by 130 foot depth. And then the perimeter lots, much larger at 13,600 square foot, a lot width of 80 feet, a lot depth of 70 feet. The side setback has been doubled to 10 feet, so within that 80-foot lot, there will be 20 feet worth of private open space of setbacks. And then the rear principal and accessory setbacks have increased to create a perimeter setback minimum of 100 feet. And lot coverage, unlike as we looked through in Buckingham 345 that had that large 55% lot coverage, we're proposing only a 40% lot coverage for those larger lots, so that would ensure that it just doesn't create a large McMansion on a larger lot.
And that's in the R2 area?
That's correct.
And then with regard to the alternative master concept plan, or master concept plan 2, there's no revisions at all to that one? I thought there was, the larger R2 area.
The larger
only.
R2 in the first master concept plan, yes, there are. We had, that was in the proposed condition, that was in the applicant's response to the supplemental staff.
Okay, so that would basically be the original plan, except for that R2 area, which has its own property development regulation.
That's correct.
And the unit count remains the same?
Correct.
Okay.
And Madam Hearing
But this would be the substituted master concept plan in that instance, because it
Correct.
reflects the R2 area.
Correct.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to make one clarification with regard to the conditions I handed you because you made a comment that I thought about as I sat down. So I have given these to staff today. We met with staff yesterday to talk about the alternative plan, and they asked us to sort of work up some conditions that would apply to the alternative, and I spent the weekend doing that, so they didn't have them last week because they asked us to do it. So I wanted to make that clarification, and so that they, in fairness to them.
Thank you.
So if I can just, Carl, are you done?
I was going to summarize again
Okay, go ahead.
to make sure we're clear. But
Then I'd like to speak to Richard again, but go ahead.
Okay, real quickly, because there was so much discussion, the intent of the pass-through conveyance in the alternate plan is to provide exactly what is required in the existing or current master concept plan, with the exception of now 60 feet would be provided so that it physically would fit and could be constructed that way. So that's really the only change.
Say it again?
The only change between the current master concept plan and the alternate plan is that the width now would be adequate to actually construct that conveyance, whereas in the current plan, there was not enough width in the flowway or drainage easement to actually construct it.
Right, and it's a different site plan. It's more, it's,
Different site plan, but with respect to the pass-through only, the
Yes.
only change is that width.
okay.
And then I finally wanted to point out that we talked a lot about water quality in the original hearing, and that the original site plan proposed did provide an additional water quality treatment for pass-through conveyance. Neither the alternate plan or the current master concept plan provide that additional water quality, only the original proposed master concept
Right,
plan.
so whatever existing contaminants are passing through to the Caloosahatchee or Orange River, that's going to continue. There's no improvement
Correct.
with maintaining the center conveyance, even with the dimensions that allow for its maintenance.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so help me understand. The board, we all found the initial plan consistent with the plan, okay? And that the bypass ditch was an environmental enhancement and that there were many pluses to that project. The board seemed to focus on lot size and home separation. I seem to have some recollection regarding the side setback. So in your revised plan, the master concept plan, you provided an illustration to show that the lot sizes are really much larger, because if you extended them to the perimeter and counted that toward the lots, that creates a larger lot size. And I appreciate that and understood that in the initial application, which lent me toward the approval, even though it appeared that the model of this was not typical for that area, okay? But in this second master concept plan, other than that, and this R2 area, the homes are still going to be quite close together.
Yes, the setbacks don't change, and because of there's just not room to do it at the density within the,
So
when you move the conveyance around the outside.
Right.
You can't change the lot size or lot
Right.
dimension.
So the only way that can be achieved is to go to the alternative.
That is correct.
Okay. And in that situation, that's the situation where you can drop the unit number.
That's correct.
And then what's the side setback on that? I thought I still saw 5 feet or 10 feet.
No, I believe it's
10 feet for R2, it's not 10 feet for R1.
It's, the property development regulations for the alternate plan followed the schematic of Buckingham 345 that was approved by the board and brought up in the staff supplemental report. In Buckingham 345, they have 3 residential categories. The residential category that is large on the perimeter, there we go. So this R3 that it's just on this perimeter, right here and right here and right here, those are the 13,600 square foot lots. The very next layer, which starts right here, you see the line here, and then all of these lots, that next layer, those lots allow 50-foot lots, the same as proposed with this development.
With a 5-foot side setback?
I believe so.
Okay, please double check, because, I mean, my recollection is the board seemed to focus on that. They zeroed in on that side setback.
I agree. I heard the same from the board. So this would be R2, single family, side setback is 5, that's correct. So all of the lots that are in this second layer are all 50 feet with a 5-foot side setback, the same as proposed. The only lots that have a different side setback are those that are on these dead ends, right here where they do get close to the rural community preserve. And that has a larger setback. But yes, the alternate plan is a near duplicate, a replica of what Buckingham 345 is proposed and approved at. With the exception, we have larger setbacks and larger buffers.
Larger setbacks than what?
Larger buffers.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have any other questions of me?
Not right now, maybe again later after
All
I
right.
hear staff's presentation.
And that concludes our initial presentation. I will say this, with regard to, we didn't do any additional traffic analysis or bring Mr. Trish up here. The count remains the same or is reduced, and the entrances and the access points remain the same. Also, we didn't discuss the environmental because it's essentially the same even under both plans, as you heard from Ms. Sapin. If you have questions on that, we're happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Trump?
Good morning. Sharam Badamchian from the county zoning. I'm here, examiner. After the board remanded this, we looked at it one more time, and we listened to the tape of the hearing. And board talked about lot sizes, dimensions, development regulations, site setbacks. Especially one of the commissioners insisted on site setbacks and consistency with policy 5.1.5. And several months ago, a few months ago, we had another project approved, Buckingham 345, and it was adjacent to rural community preserve, but it was not included in the rural community preserve, similar to this project. And our logic was that board approved that one with setbacks, different setbacks and different lot sizes, and this is no different than that one. So basically, we proposed setbacks that were approved as part of the Buckingham 345. And I'm seeing that for site plan, master concept plan number 2, revised master concept plan, they are proposing those setbacks. However, what staff proposed was a side setback of 7.5 for interior lots and side setback of 10 for perimeter lots. And
That's 2.5 feet more than Buckingham 345.
correct.
Why is that?
Well, this is because I believe board wanted larger setbacks, side setbacks, in order to reduce the number of units. They never mentioned number of units. They never said that the number is too high, but they talked about wider lots and larger setbacks. The way we thought about it, that's the way the board was trying to say that reduce the number of units. And we did some crude calculations with the Master Concept Plan 1. Master Concept Plan 2, it's kind of new. The old Master Concept Plan, we did with the lots, the size we are proposing, they can get around 200 units.
How many?
200. I mean, it's not the exact number. We just drew with hands, come up with numbers. It's about 200 units they can get with the larger setbacks that staff proposes in the staff report.
So really, the only difference from what you're proposing for lot dimensions and what they're proposing is this additional 2.5-foot side
Setbacks.
between dwellings.
We are proposing 80-foot lot width, 80 for perimeter, lot width 75 for interior. But
Okay.
and also we are proposing lot area 7,500 for interior and 13,600 for perimeter. 7,500 is basically RM1 zoning, which is most of Lee County's single-family subdivisions, which are not planned development, they are RS1. So 7,500 is from regular single-family lot size.
Were there any other examples of subdivisions approved adjacent to or in proximity to the Buckingham Rural Preserve that you could have?
Well, there are some developments approved, but they are not abutting the preserve. They are further out and they have smaller lots, yes. But this is the only one that abuts. And we could find this project that was approved like a few months ago. And
So you're saying that other projects approved within the last 5 years in proximity to the rural preserve all had smaller lots?
not all, but there were some with smaller lots.
And there were some with larger lots?
Some with larger lots,
So why am I not looking at that as
because
this?
they are not abutting rural community preserve. We were trying to, since rural community preserve is the one that is requiring larger lot size abutting to them, we were trying to find projects that abut rural community preserve, but they are not within the rural community preserve.
Okay, because I believe my request for information prior to this remand hearing was existing residential development in the Buckingham planning community. So I'm just curious as to why I only got a comparison of one, that's all. Because I feel like that was, staff's response was not responsive to my request, which didn't say Buckingham Rural Preserve, it said the planning community itself, which I think would give you an opportunity to kind of broaden that.
It would, but Buckingham Community Preserve, there aren't that many projects, really. It's mostly agricultural today.
Well, I know I've had one or two on Orange River Road in the last 5 years.
Actually, I did two on Orange River Road, yes. And they had smaller lots, but they were nowhere close to the rural community preserve.
Like miles?
Few miles, maybe, yes.
Okay. All right.
With that said, if you're inclined and recommending approval of revised master concept plan 2, we never had time to review that. We didn't have time to review the drainage, improvement to the drainage. And we were looking at the site plan that they just handed to us. There's no easement. We require easement to maintain maintenance easement for the drainage, which they are not proposing one.
You're talking about the proposed conditions that they provided?
No, just looking at the master concept plan B, or the revised master concept plan they just handed to you, And
Alternative-
cross-sections, they are basically showing the same dimensions. They are talking about larger dimensions, but what I'm trying to say is that we would need some time to review this.
Which one? The alternative master?
Alternative master concept plan, correct. Because the master concept plan one, they are not really proposing anything. They are just showing how large lots were supposed to be
Well, and they-
included.
They're adding that R2 area with the larger
Yeah.
lots
That,
in the
That's-
lower corner where it
Yeah.
abuts.
yeah, I realize that, but they are not proposing that much change. There are master concept plan two, if you look, they are changing the drainage, and we need to review that, the proposed revision to the drainage.
Okay, even though it's the exact same location as the existing drainage?
Well, may I approach?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not a drainage expert, but they were talking about making it 60, but they all talk about 40. There's no 60 in master concept plan.
Okay, well, that's the excavation setback. Drainage easement to
Right.
lake.
It may be just a typo, but
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, so if you take a look at the alternative master concept plan, and you examine the width of the drainage easement, it says proposed 40-foot drainage easement.
I'm sorry, Madam Hearing Examiner, I was listening to Mr. Bonamshin and you at the same time, and I didn't follow what you said.
Okay, I have the alternative master concept plan in front of me. If you look on the far left, it describes the drainage easement as 40 feet. Look, it says proposed 40-foot drainage easement in the center. And in each instance, it's referred to as a 40-foot drainage easement, not a 60-foot.
It's just a Scrivener's error, it's supposed to be 60.
Okay, so you'll be providing a revised document to me. We'll leave the record open for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you'll notice on the site plan, not on the cross sections, but on the site plan, it's noted as a master, or as a 60-foot drainage easement in the middle of the site.
Yes, I see that.
Okay.
Okay, so you just need to conform these notes in the margin to what's shown on the center of the master concept plan.
That's correct.
Okay, Shram, so back to you. They're saying that that discrepancy was a Scrivener's error, and they're directing us to the notation on the actual plan drawing itself that says 60. They're going to replace this document. So with that knowledge,
with that knowledge, Madam Hearing Examiner, just by looking at it, we noticed that typo. We don't know what else is in there that we haven't noticed yet. We would
you
like.
need more time. How much
We need
time?
more time, and also, as proposed, they are not in compliance with the Land Development Code 10-328 for drainage. That's what I was informed right now. That
Okay. So we'll hear testimony on that. Do you have anything further, Mr.?
No,
Hey, good morning. My name is Nick DeFilippo. I'm with the planning section. Just to talk about the 10328. So if the drainage ditch is indeed going to be 60 feet wide, that section of code requires 20-foot maintenance easement on each side. So we would need that to be within that cross-section. We would need to see that in the cross-section, and if the applicant would like to reduce that, we would need, probably additional information from the applicant, and
Deviation?
that, yes, we would need some more information,
Okay,
so.
understood. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything further from staff?
no, ma'am. Just,
So your recommendation, are you maintaining your position from your supplemental staff report? but leaving the window open to further examination of alternative master
Correct.
concept plan?
We are suggesting that the proposed increased setback would take care of all the issues that we had. However, if they want to change the master concept plan, then we need to look at that master concept plan, and we need some time to review that.
Okay.
We cannot review it during the public hearing. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, we've heard from the applicant and staff. I'm going to invite members of the public to come up to speak. You can direct your comments either to staff's alternative proposal or the alternative proposal offered by the applicant. I'm going to urge you not to repeat what you had mentioned before regarding traffic or anything, since that's on the record. But certainly, any comments you have on these proposals, any questions you have regarding clarifications that you may need on these alternative proposals, please ask them. We'll have the parties make a note of them, and then after all the public input, we'll ask staff and applicant to please clarify those questions that you may have. Don Blackburn? Good morning, thank you for coming.
Good morning. I just want to start by saying and repeating what I've been repeating for over 30 years, that the main issue in Buckingham, in the Buckingham Preserve and the comp plan amendment we did, was lot size. That was the number one issue. And we did it for space, basically, so people could have more space and not be crowded with small setbacks between houses and small setbacks off the roads. So that's the number one, because this property is within the Buckingham Preserve. That's why that we're still concerned about the lot size, because that was the number one thing that we wanted to preserve in Buckingham. You know, back when we did this, we looked into the future and saw that Buckingham area could be an amenity to Lee County, especially on the south side of the river, because we've got Lehigh on the east, and then we got the city of Fort Myers to the west, and it's like a little preserve enclave, and that was our whole mindset back when we did that. And that's, the commissioners back then voted 5-0, staff approved it, everybody loved it, and that's what we're trying to protect. That's why every time something comes up, you see us here. We're encouraged by Sharam's staff report that it reduced the lots down to, reduced it by 50 lots. But we still think that we can do more. But we do want to thank him for his review and his opinion on that. There's a lot been mentioned about the Buckingham 345 comparison to this project. And I just want to make sure that there's an understanding that there's really a difference between the two. And to compare, I know that there could be a slight comparison because they're one's adjacent and one's surrounded, is an enclave inside. But the Buckingham 345 is in the outlying suburban category. The Orange River RPD is in the sub-outlying category. So it's not really apples to apples, it's apples to oranges, so to speak, with the development of it. And to compare the lot sizes and try to make the lot sizes the same that are in the Buckingham 345 with this one, I think is missing the mark. I think that we should be looking at maybe larger lots within this RPD and larger setbacks, which is basically what the county commissioners had looked for. To me, that's kind of an important item, the difference between the two developments, and then trying to compare them as being very similar. I want to say again, and I said this at the last time, the minimum lot size width that's being proposed, it's getting better. I would admit that it's better than the original, but we're to a point now to where we've got the same size lot that is in the city of Cape Coral. The minimum lot size in Cape Coral to build a house on is 80 feet wide, and the minimum depth is 120. So now we're at having Cape Coral size development lots within Buckingham, the rural Buckingham area. So we think that can be further increased to be more compatible. There was some talk at the last hearing about the on-site wetland that was dying. I think Carl talked about that, and part of what they were going to do was going to help revive it. And I'd ask you to please look at some aerials from back in 20 years ago.
Okay, well, I have to confine my review to the parameters of the remand.
Okay.
So the remand does not ask me to look at anything beyond this issue of lot size, setback, density.
Okay, I didn't know because they redesigned the drainage through the wetland, if maybe that could be brought up. But my only question about that was whether county staff agreed with the viability of that wetland. So I won't say anything further on that. One of the questions that I would like for them to answer is, are the proposed lot lines encumbered by any easements, drainage easement, utility easement, any easements, especially at the rear lot lines of the easements? I don't know, there hasn't been no talk about that, so that's one question that we would like to know.
Okay, so you would like clarification on whether the rear lot lines include or encumbered by a drainage easement or some kind of easement?
Yeah, the regulations prevent it. Of course, you could always ask for a deviation from it, and I don't think they asked for that. But now that we're dealing with so many different plans, and actually it sounds like there's a plan out there now that we haven't even seen. And so that's a question, is when they're increasing the lot size, but keeping pretty much the same density, how are they doing that? And one way would be to include the easements within the lots. And so that's a question I'd like to have answered.
Okay, we'll request clarification of that.
All right. The other thing is, once this eventually gets approved down the road, and I don't know, I haven't heard any talk about it, but I just want to say in closing that there was no talk about walls. I know a lot of gated communities have perimeter walls. I know they're providing large buffers, but I'd like to see something, a condition that there be no perimeter walls around this development once it gets approved.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thomas McKibbins. Good morning. Thank you for coming, sir.
I'm not too good at this. Okay, it works.
Yeah, you don't have to touch anything.
Okay, thank
Speak
you.
up.
Yeah, my name's Tom McGibbons, and my wife is Debbie Dargan. I think she might be on the same paperwork.
Debbie, I will call her next if she wishes to speak.
Okay. We're really here to support Buckingham Preserve and to try to keep things as I don't know, not change way of life and that too much, okay, as things go on. So we're here to support that. I'm glad you mentioned the traffic and not to bring it up because that seems like the obvious one. So thank you for doing that. I think, again, just trying to object with the current plan to go forward and here to support that and try to, again, keep the density down because Buckingham Preserve, where we're at, is everything is 1 acre, and I think that it breeds a certain behavior and things in people and aesthetics and things like that. So I'm here to support. I don't think I have a lot of different things to add. I wanted to be able to speak at the next meeting if necessary. So
Okay,
thank you for listening.
sir. Debbie Dargan?
I just wanted to object to the lot size. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Beverly Reed? Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good morning to you. And I won't be long. Initially, I wasn't going to say anything different than what had been said previously, but I'd have to say, hearing all of this about Buckingham Project 345 and the Land Development Code, I'm beginning to wonder about the Land Development Code. If we're allowing builders to continue to propose projects based on what has been done recently, as comparing this to 345, and already the gentleman expressed it's like comparing apples to oranges, I'm just wondering if there's going to be any open space left in the area, or if we're going to become a city, basically, with lots of buildings, lots of houses, townhouses, and I know the townhouses aren't proposed in this development, but the lot size is important to how many homes are built in the area. And bottom line, the number of homes, the number of automobiles, traffic lights, et cetera, it does have an impact on one's quality of life. And I think that's why people come here. They want a good life, and it's changing. So maybe we need to look at the Land Development Code too. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to mispronounce your last name, I'm afraid, but Manny? Is there a Manny here? That's me. Okay, how do you say your last name? Flint. Flint, okay, thank you. Please come to the podium.
I really wasn't planning on speaking. I imagine everybody's going to be saying about the same thing, but I've been living in Buckingham all my life and quite a change in everything now. But they keep coming in. Every time there's a new development, it seems like they come in with a plan and then they want to, all of a sudden they want to get more units and everything else. And it's just putting such a strain on the on all the facilities and our infrastructure. I mean, we can't even keep up with the roads. All the roads now out there in Buckingham, you have to wait just to get out on the main road. There's so much traffic. And they put these houses there, and the other house developments that's going, there's nobody fixing the roads. And I just see it's a major strain on the facilities that we have. And I think they need to hold it to what the original plan was.
Thank you. Jeff Gray. Good morning.
Good morning. No real additions to what was said last time, except with the number of lakes, was there an additional pond or lake put in on this new proposal?
No, I think that they shrunk one of the lakes so that they could make larger lots.
Okay, just a concern there that's developed, because I know in our street, just in the past 2 months, 3 people have had to dig new wells. I'm just concerned about where they're going to get the water sourcing to fill those lakes or ponds from to do this.
Okay, we'll ask for clarification on that. Betsy Burdette. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Betsy Burdette. I've lived in Buckingham now for 40 years. I've worked continuously to preserve the country lifestyle and the values that make this community special. The property seeking rezoning today requested rezoning in May of 2005. The original zoning was approved by the Planning Department, approved by the County Commissioners, and it was approved for 160 homes. So I don't understand why it doesn't stay 160 homes. What makes it different now that we have to increase the density?
Thank you. Bill Burdette? Good morning. Thank you for coming.
I'm Bill Burdette, and I'm Vice President of the Buckingham Community Association. I will stand by my comments regarding the revised plan being inconsistent with Goal 20 and incompatible with Objective 20.1, noting that, in the revised plan, 97% of the lots have not really changed, so it has not satisfied the direction of the commissioners. Regarding policy 20.1.6, I stand by my previous comments. Again, the lot sizes haven't changed significantly, and I'm glad you brought up the idea of precedence with other projects in the Buckingham area, because several years ago, there was a development called Horse Creek on Orange River Boulevard within the Buckingham Community Preserve. The original proposal on Horse Creek was Bonita Bay development, was 1 acre minimum size lots, but they included the water retention areas, the drainage areas, lakes into their 1 acre calculations. And the county rejected that. And they had to come back and they did net 1 acre lots, usable net 1 acre lots. So that should be the standard as far as lots go, determining what is a usable lot. So I thank you for bringing that up. The alternate plan, I'm just addressing the revisions here. The alternate plan, the R2 lots, they're still only a third the size of the prevailing 1 acre lots in Buckingham, which is not an adequate transition. And I think it's been noted, that the reduced 10 units were at the expense of landscaping and buffering, according to Mrs. Stapin. So I would object to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Millard Philippe. Good morning.
Good morning. I have a presentation to show. I have 2 copies.
Are these 2 identical copies?
Yes.
Okay.
Can give
I'm
one
going to give.
to the staff, maybe.
I'm going to.
Need some.
Well, actually, I was going to give it to the applicant. This will be Philippe Exhibit 1, and it's a composite. And this includes a copy of your PowerPoint?
It is my PowerPoint.
Okay. I'm going to give it, just give me a minute to give it to Mr. Aiken. I marked the exhibit. Okay, you may begin.
Thank you. So this is from the letter we found from the new application. So what they're talking about is everybody talking about 345. And if you're looking at 345, you have the location where is 345. In green here is what you see is Buckingham Preserve, so it's still not in Buckingham Preserve. Their lot is in the Buckingham Preserve. Of course, we agree with them when they say they like to use the policy 20. So that is what we think we should be using for this property. Of course, this is, again, the same. If you look at that, is adjacent. So adjacent is nearby, not in. This property is inside. And the old determination have been issued for 160 on the past. They was showing you how the old property, who was smaller, and they're trying to tell you they're matching the area. If you, again, is the same, this area was grandfather, or they was done before the rural community was imposed, and the same to the show, it's a very old house, you can see. Some of them can probably be in preserve historic monument. Now, if you pick all the adjacent lot you have nearby, unfortunately, this lot you can see here is so big, so it will give you more to 1 acre. So it's difficult to do an evaluation of the adjacent. So you will have to pick up the other lot, but all the other lot are lot bigger to that. So even the two acre for an house, it will be bigger to that also too. So if you pick up the adjacent, it's big. So that was what the staff proposed, and you can see they not propose 6,500, they propose 7,500 foot for the smaller lot. Now, if you look in the Cape Coral, is what some other people say. In Cape Coral is 80 by 125, so it's 0.23 acre per house. That is 10,000 square foot. It's not 7.6, it's very small. So we would like to keep. So I don't understand why the staff trying to give them 200, how they calculate that. So I will come back on that because the gentleman from the staff was not able to figure out how they calculate that. So, but I have some calculation I did myself, so I'll show you later. So that is what the Board of Commissioners talk. And this is a policy 5.15. And he asked to not restrict the character, like we talked before. And it says also if the application is inadequate, the application should be denied together. So that is the proposal. By the way, everything you see in red is from the paper to the proposed, and everything is blue is all the staff or the law and regulation. So now we look at it and we see they not even follow what the staff recommend. Now they was talking also of R3, R4, and what the question is, do they go to build the 1 story, 2 story? This is on their documentation. You show 1 story, 2 story, you show everything in there. And you show R3, but on their documentation, you show R1 and R2, so it's mix and match. So which one you pick, which one is very confusing. I see a lot of people are confused with that, including the staff, and I think you are also. Okay, so that they're trying to explain here the size. So I was looking at the size. If you're looking at it on the policy 2.13, it says a calculation of the lot size must exclude any road, right-of-way, easement area, water management area, and a natural body of water. So I don't understand how they come with all this big number.
They were just using that by way of illustration to say that
Yeah,
it's the equivalent of.
No, it's not equivalent. It's pretty straightforward here. It say you should not be using that for equivalent. So I don't know. Anyway, for here, I don't see no R2 zoning. So that is for the south. Oh, actually, it's the north, sorry. I make it wrong on my document, but that is the north side. And if you go to the south side, pretty much what I see is only 7 lots who are the size. Now, don't forget here, also, if you look at the policy 2.5, it should be at least 100 feet away from the RP zoning. Here, you don't have, from the house to that, you don't have 100 feet. Also, on their documentation, when they show everything, it shows exactly where the lot should stay. It says the zoning. So if you look at this lot who shows they are very big, really the zone, if you calculate the zone here, it should be somewhere here. So you can see this size are not proper. Only these 7 lots are proper. The rest, everything else is smaller. Because you was asking how many, why we don't shrink, and it's why it's only 7 size. So if you look here, this is in red is what they put to proposal. They're talking about, well, this is what I see. I see only 7 lots who are R2 and 251 who are R1 size. But if you look on their documentation, they say they put a lot more R2.
Right, that's confusing. We'll ask them to clarify that. I was also confused.
Now, everybody trying to figure out how much house you can put on this property. So I don't even look how it's manufactured or everything. Trying to do what you have for. So here on the sides, you can do not build is FPL right away. So it's underneath the electric line. So you can do. So you have 10 acres. The wetland preserve, we found you have 19.48 acres. The water management, and that is also something we need to look because on one plan and on other plans, they shrink the lake, so how they go to follow the rule and regulation for the water, for water management, how they go to do, because which ones they need? This is my more big question. So if you look on Ofte, you have the road. This is, I put up about approximately 10 acres because, of course, every drawing they have don't show all the information, but from last previous hearing, it was showing 10 acres, so I just use the same as a basic. So technically, I found only 59.1, depending on what plans they option. That is their master concept plan, the first one they propose. That is optionary. So if you find the number of acres, this is the number of acres. So that was obviously the total acre of the property himself. So if you divide that by 2 acres per house, you can get only this number of lots, depending on which one you use. And policy 111 say 2 dwelling by acre. So it's not possible. You can squeeze it, put them different way. It don't work. Okay, so that is where we was coming with the buffer size. So this is what they propose. And if you look at some of the property here, you have on the side, he said he should have, see here, this is from their document, he said 10. And on the policy here, it should be 100 feet back from the RPD boundary. If you look at the 10 plus 45 from the buffer, it's less 200. So this is not working. If you're looking at this lot here, it's the same. It's 5 plus 20 is not equal to 100. If you do here, it's 20 plus because this is R2 lot, so it's 20. So 20 plus 10, it don't work. So that is the buffer they have. Okay. So that is for the EPA. They say on the paper from the letters you have in 2020 from the Lee County, they was asking for 256 hours. They was asking for that number of gallons. If you do the math, you get to see here is 250 hours, 58 hours, not 256. So you divide that by the number of gallons, it's only 250 gallons per hour. This is not matching with the EPA request 300 gallons. So how are they going to get the water? And also on policy 20.32, it says under no circumstance available to you need to have the water because you want more lot. So it's exactly what's happened. If you want 258 hours, you can imagine how many septic tank and how many well water you will need. So this is why they request the water, is to be able to put the number of property. But the policy say, under no circumstance will the available central water accepted by justification for density and intensity increase or reduction of size lot require. Of course, they do have the 10 acres to be able to request it, and they do have a lot of other stuff, but that they don't follow here. Okay, now you have another issue. It's the location where they are, actually near the FPL. On a lot of places, they're talking about you have no law by Florida law, but you have the Protection Act for people with next to the power line. So Lee County will be responsible for that because these houses are not close to where they should be. The Orange River send 230 kilovolts AC on their power line here. And they're talking you need to be at least 200-300 foot to be in tolerance. They prefer 300 foot, 330 foot for safe. How these people here will go to live here, go to be healthy? I mean, a lot of times they say, well, you need to stay for temporary time, but how you go to move your house or you go to live one day every other day in your house? How you go to do with that? Also, from zero, they say it's about 30% lost on your property value. So this house going to be discounted, or what's going to happen with this poor house? The water. According to Lee County, you have a lot of protected tree, and this is what, from one of the surveys they did, this is all the tree was here. So the new proposal go to have an open, so you go to cut through the protected area. You go to cut 70 foot of ditch in the middle of the preserve area. So how you go to do that? How's they go to do that? So that is their proposal of their two different water management and lake. And so I don't see here the 10 acre for the FPL right away because they do the calculation here, but you don't have the 10 acre removed. So these numbers are not completely correct. And for the water management, what according to the previous paper, it was showing they needed to do 7 CFS for discharge and a water quality of 10.37. Do both of these options still agree with that? And another question is this one. This is a national wetland inventory. So can they really, because the act of the Congress was 99.645, that was requested as keeping as is. Can they really cut inside and build inside and remove everything? And according to the Lee County Policy 13.51, species of special concern, threatened and endangered should be taking care of it. So what's going to happen with that? Also on their lot, we can see here, this is their code from their plan. And if you look at it, a lot of the protected area get removed. It can already be removed. And so that is again the calculation. You can see here, when you pick up these two numbers and you calculate what is protected, that is a water protection and that is a land. You can see here on any of this stuff, of this calculation, you're missing between 2 and 4.68 acres. So how that is possible? So that is a question I asked last time from my previous presentation, but you never get a reply to it. You can see here, this is the old ditch, what everybody call, but it have a name actually. It's called the straight-arm drainage way, and it passes right in the middle, and you can see the different type of sand. So if you do the option where you go all the way around, how does this affect the wildlife and how this, if you do water, dependent of the sand, the water do not flow the same way. Some sand are more permeable and some are more sucking up everything, taking away. How's that going to affect the wildlife management and how's that going to affect the area? Also, you have, I did not hear nothing from the staff about the Lee County flooding task, and I know a lot of us are very worried about that, and it's why we have mixed feeling about the two plans. It's, if you look at it, you have the Lee County already calculate we need to be able to flow 200 to 500 CFS. So it will be have the 200 plus 500 CFS plus whatever they needed for water management. Do anything go to, do that go to be able to accommodate? Also for the two plans we get, we did not see, as you can see, this is the Florida panther habitat. And you can see this is Old Lee County. This is just the area. If you look at here, it's 6 Mile Cypress north. And here in red is the same. And you can see here the FPL natural corridor. And you can see the wildlife was able to go from the power line to the protected area. But I did not see nothing on your proposal to allow for that. I see lot and property, but nothing for according to that. If you look at it here, this is the north side and the south side of the Florida power, and you see the power line going here, and from here, the panther have a way to flow from one side to the other side, but now, and a lot of times they stop in this area so they can get water, they can refuge in here, but now it's gone. They have no way you can drive, you can go from here to this area who was protected. I did not see nothing on two proposals where you have something for that. So that is pretty much the same but you have also your policy 123-121. And he said you need to do something. I did not see no proposal for that. That is, the wildlife is the same, but also we talked before about, I know we talk about road, but what's happened with the first responder? How are they going to be able to travel here with the increase of people in here? And that is still the transportation and still important to us. I know we can do nothing about personnel, but what's happened with the first responder again? And I know we have, I guess Lee County put a YouTube video where Mr. Ted Tresh was telling us the traffic was affected with the dependent of the season, but if you look at the Lee County documentation, you have no effect from the year to year, or barely any effect, and time and day. And that is, you get new increase again and again. That's it.
Thank you very much. Gary Stillwell. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Gary Stillwell. I dubious distinction following that. I mean, I had a tremendous amount of the information that I was going to speak about, and it was just covered for the most part. Very, very comprehensive. I would like to add something, though, in the comparisons between the Buckingham 345 and this project. Again, the previous speaker brought out the differences between the two. This project is entirely enclosed by the preserve, whereas that one was abutted. One of the things I believe that is pertinent here is the 20.1.6 in the preserve community plan speaks to two different ways of transitioning density from a new project. Two different ways. They're separate ways. By transitioning increases in density as the development moves away from the rural community preserve boundary, and appropriate buffers will be established for projects adjacent to the preserve. So there's two things there that will do that. In the Buckingham 345, two different applications, DCI 964-568 and the 2004-00090 DCI. Both of those projects, the increase in density from 324 or something to that nature up to 1,135 dwelling units were both denied by the hearing examiner, in large part because of the transitional nature was not there to support that. That, in effect, creates what some legal scholars have described as a quasi-judicial precedent, which establishes a precedent for reasoning behind a situation where you have identical or very similar projects and you have precedent set that says, no, this one's not going to be this. We have to have a different outcome than what we did in the past. In a quasi-judicial situation such as we have here, whether or not to accept that or that precedent is entirely up to the hearing examiner. However, if the examiner accepts that as precedent and applies it in a very similar situation, as they call, let me read here, reasonably articulate the basis for the decision, that's fine. However, if they choose not to use that, there must be extraordinary and compatible reasoning behind making the change from what was decided in the past to a similar situation in the future. And that is an exhibit I would have for you if you wouldn't mind me approaching.
Okay, I'll mark this.
And apologize, I didn't.
We'll
I
make
can give you the.
copy.
Are you allowed to give them a copy?
We'll arrange for him to get a copy.
I didn't make one. I apologize.
Okay, this is Stillwell Exhibit 1.
All right, I think as far as discussing some of the other community plan stuff, I would rather shift now, since of the previous presentation pretty much covered everything, to questions. There was some mention there of reduction of the lake size, that one that's next to the FPL property. And also the discussion about that the fill from the lake would be used, or the excavation from the lake was going to be used for fill in the project. I didn't see anything or hear anybody discuss whether or not the soil analysis in this project determined whether the soil that they were digging out is going to be adequate for fill for the project.
Okay, well, the focus of this remand hearing is on lot size and setbacks.
Okay, very good. And the other two were, there were four reasons. One was, I can't even remember that. In any event, the applicant has talked about reduction of the lake size. I didn't see anything about how that's going to impact water quality, nor did I see anything in there about irrigation sources and whether they're going to be digging any wells out there to allow that. As far as conveyance pass-through, that does impact lot size. There was a discussion about it was going to be a pass-through, and there would be, I understood, no water quality monitoring for that.
Okay, sir, I have to tell you that the scope of this remand is lot sizes and dimensions, the site development regulations, and compliance with LEED Plan Policy 5.1.5, which has to do with compatibility of surrounding land uses. And the scope of my review and recommendation to the board will be limited to those very narrow issues. So to the extent you can tailor your comments to those issues, that would be most helpful.
The water quality would be a part of the surrounding area, because that would require an NPDES permit. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'm going to take one more person, then we're going to take a 10-minute break. The next name that I have is David Hutto. Would you like to come speak, sir? Again, I'd like to remind everyone of the scope of this remand hearing, lot sizes and dimensions, the site development regulations, and compliance with a LEED Plan policy that speaks to compatibility with surrounding land uses.
Pretty much all that can be said has already been said, but the thing that I have a question about is the county commissioner sent this all back to replanning. And as far as I can see, these people haven't given up anything. increasing the lot sizes they took from setbacks that were already in the plan. They haven't reduced the request for density or anything else. So they're not, as far as I'm concerned, they're not trying to compromise and get this out of the way. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Nancy, I know that you're like connected with this guy, but we're going to take a 10-minute break so we can stretch our legs and give the court reporter a chance to rest. We will resume at shortly after 5 minutes after 11. Thank you. You were just about to sit.
Good morning. Everything pretty much what I was going to say has already been covered, so I'm not going to waste your time or mine or theirs. I do want to compliment the planning department for going over this more. Also, it was mentioned that maybe there was another plan, the third plan that they have presented. Is that right?
I'm not aware of a third plan. I'm aware of the two alternative plans.
Mm-hmm.
There's no third.
No third plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all
Thank
I
you.
have. Thank you.
John Wilkes, Sr.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is John W. Wilkes. I've lived in Buckingham since 1974. I've seen a lot of changes. The main reason we set up the Lee County Preserve, or the Buckingham Rural Preserve, was to protect our way of life out there. I want to remind you of 5.1.5 of the Lee County Plan. Our way of life out there is to raise cattle, ride our horses, raise our chickens, and protect our way of life. We don't want to change, and this goes against the 5.5 in our plan. It does not fit, as the Lee County Commissioner said before. It does not fit. The lot sizes are wrong, and the transition into the community is wrong. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Corey Wilkes. Okay, thank you. Sandra Wilkes.
Good morning, Madam Examiner. My name is Sandra Wilkes, native of Florida for 45 years and living in Buckingham that long. It has become very stressful to commute in Buckingham through 12 developments now in progress. Watching the raping and destruction of the countryside is turning Buckingham into a forgotten paradise. At the February 8th Commissioners' hearing, Mr. Baracco said the goal was to get rid of wells and septic systems. That must be a developer's dream, not a Buckingham preserve. All the developments have already caused some residents to report their wells have gone dry. Buckingham opposes central sewer lines. At the closing remarks of the February 8th hearing on this same rezoning, Commissioner Pendergrass stated mistakes were made 20 years ago in the approval of the development Reflection Lakes on Palomino Drive off Daniels Road in the 6-mile Cypress Slough. It caused traffic congestion to the extent there is only one way in and same way out of the project. Lessons learned from that draws a closer look at this development. We, the people of Buckingham, made our compromise on this property 17 years ago, in 2006, by agreeing to accept 160 home sites, which is an overdose of what it should be. 258 homes are too dense for this area. No transition into preserve is included, making it incompatible and unacceptable. I definitely oppose this rezoning and respectfully request you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Lodge.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for paying such close attention. I'll tell you, I deal with this stuff all the time, and I was thoroughly confused listening to a lot of this morning. And also, thank you. You clarified a lot of things for me in the back. My name is Terry Lodge. I'm a resident of Buckingham, and I want to speak in opposition to the amended plan that they prepared for us today. A lot of things have already been discussed about it. It is not compatible with 5.1.5. And in addition to what we've already seen, and I know you've seen the county, Lee County plan maps. I looked at just one of them yesterday, which I thought was really interesting, because this one applies to the agriculture. And it speaks to the point where this little blue dot is right where the subject property is located. And this is right in the middle of our agricultural zoning. No other communities and no other developments have been proposed in any similar spot, which makes this totally out of the question as far as does it comply with what's around it or not. It certainly doesn't. And in addition, it's a little spot here, and they've had it up there, totally surrounded by the rural area. The other properties, 345 and some of the others that the commissioners talked about at their last meeting, might be adjacent to it or close to the property, but they're not in the property. The property also, they addressed on 82, I took a look at, which was similar zoned to what our property is that we're talking about today. And the transition was central urban and urban community development, which is a far higher density rating, a much more strict type of zoning than what we're dealing with here in Buckingham. So I'm hoping that what we fought so hard, not me, but others here, to get that 160 home density in the middle of our area is what we expect to see represented by our commissioners and our planning and zoning department, which have already looked at this parcel many, many times. And I appreciate everything you're doing to listen to us today. Thank you for everything that everybody has done, and I hope we can stay on task. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted Pickering. Robert Murray.
Good morning. I have some pictures to hand out to you, or
Okay, this is Murray Composite Exhibit 1.
yeah, this is related to lot sizes. Kind of affects everything. The stormwater in the area. Yeah, myself, I've been a resident and lived in Buckingham since 1991, plus or minus. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Florida. I was involved with the Conservancy years ago when we went through the property that's current existing rezoning with the Conservancy, the meetings with the property owners, worked out the deal. We were somewhat okay with what happened back then. Before I get into the stormwater issues, the applicant in their submittal gave an example, plus on page 4 they're written, and today they picked out some small lot sizes within Buckingham around the perimeter of the property, and that's really no way, shape, or form a good example of what the lot sizes are in Buckingham. River Grove Estates is a good example, so really don't buy that example. Picking those small lot sizes, that's a comparison. The stormwater, the picture I gave you is the day of Hurricane Irma, and that's I'm standing on Luckett Road Extension, looking south on Staley Farms Road, and this whole area flows south or flows north toward the river through the ditch we're talking about. This property we're talking about. So, and based on the drainage report in the applicant's submittal, and I confirmed the number, pretty much almost 1,200 acres of area flows through this this area, through the property, and that's a concern. With Irma, plus with last September Ian, the elevation of water was about the same as Irma, that picture I gave you. But it was found that the storm event through the hurricane was far exceeded the 25-year storm event, which was a standard design for projects. It's a standard thing. Carl knows it. All engineers know it. And what happened after Irma is a lot of developments, they built their water management systems, and beyond 25-year event, it just overflows and goes. The problem is they did the berming around projects, that it created this big bowl. So after Irma, they came back, and retrofit some berms so there's a emergency relief flow. That's one issue I want to bring up. So you know, the original design took the ditch to the west along Staley, then back out again. I had some comments on that. Talked to Carl. They took out the pipe to the wetland, but they still want to go through the wetland. And still surprised County and the agency don't have a problem with that because it may be an impacted wetland based on hydrology, but still avoidance is usually an issue that we talk about, particularly on public projects. I'm sorry. That's one of my problems. Too much coffee, I guess. Anyway, the alternative site plan they provided leaves the ditch where it currently is, and that would be the preferred location for the community. They mentioned the easement currently is 30 foot wide. There's not an access way to get in and maintain it. That's why it's not maintained by the county. So Carl mentioned a 60-foot right of way, but they need a maintenance access way. So staff mentioned 20 feet plus or minus added on to that. So that's key. One thing I want to bring up, maybe Carl can clarify it later on, but you showed a couple sections on your new ditch crossing, and the bottom elevation is like 13.25, 13.75. The existing culverts on Homestead are elevation about 12.3, 12.2. So for some reason, your section showed a higher ditch elevation to the north of Homestead. Not sure why that is. I'm curious about that. So just keep in mind that this area, this project, this ditch is the main outfall for 1,200 acres to the south. About 2 miles to the south, there's an old railroad grade, which was a feeder to the Buckingham Air Park during World War II. And that berm pretty much still exists. That was pretty much the old time divide. And all that area comes back to the north and goes through here, sheet flows going north. So long-term, drainage is an issue. And I guess just one comment on the lot sizes. We were involved years ago with the existing 160 approved. The applicant suggested going down to 248 with the alternative site plan. That's still adding 88 more lots beyond what's approved today. So really don't think that'll work in Buckingham. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Green? Leslie Bush? Donald Lewis. Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, hearing examiner, for hearing me. Very few points. Buckingham 345 should not be considered as an example of this development since it is not surrounded by the preserve. If we had a vote, my vote would be to keep the existing zoning count that exists today, not allowing any of the increases. However, if the hearing examiner and the county commission then determine that there should be an increase in count, then we would prefer to see the existing drainage ditch improved but kept where it is in a straight line to allow the conveyance of water, as the gentleman before me was talking about. Additionally, the county commissioners were very concerned about the property lines not being shown, and as far as we could see today, they are not shown on revision 2, other than the possibility that there could be 5 foot of side setback on the lots, which means the houses could be 10 feet apart. Thank you.
Lauren McIntyre.
For the record, I'm Lauren McIntyre. I'm a Buckingham resident of 6 years. My husband is a Fort Myers native, and our 4-year-old is a Buckingham native. And we are very proud of that. We would like to keep it our home. I'm also a top producing realtor serving this community. I am disappointed that we are here again after 3 years of fighting this specific rezoning, and somehow it seems we are back at square one. This has been a mockery of what this public forum is for. Now, madam, this is not your fault, and we respect you and your time and your expertise. But this is turning into a playground fight. We may be country out in Buckingham, but we are not stupid. We can see exactly what they're doing, and I am here to tell you that we will not quit. I gotta be honest, this alternative plan is offensive. For years, we've given our time, taken off work, and complimented their plan's intention to have larger setbacks and buffers on the perimeter and the improvements to the conveyance. All we have asked is to keep the number of home sites at 160. The answer to our request after all of that was to reduce the things that we've loved about the plan and complimented them on, like the setbacks and lake sizes, and the best they could do is 10 fewer home sites? Buckingham 345 backs up to the outer bounds of the preserve, and you'll say, this property isn't included in it either, and you're right. I wasn't there when that mistake was made, but just because there was a mistake made in the past doesn't mean we need to keep making that same mistake. At some point, we have to start choosing better. The point is, the major difference in these two projects is that this one is within the bounds, completely surrounded by the preserve. And as we would say in real estate, it's not a true comp. Noting the historic character of lots needs to be completed for the whole 19 square miles that is Buckingham, not just 1,500 square feet around the subject property. The properties that were noted in this were older and grandfathered in, and that's why they don't meet the plan. You've heard about lot sizes and increasing some of them. The minimum was 13,000 square feet. An acre is over 43,000 square feet. That's a 30% of what it is supposed to be. Before I became a realtor, I taught high school math in Florida, geometry to be specific. And it's very simple. You take the total acreage that you have left for your home sites after you have done everything else, after you have taken out the wetlands and your roadways and your lakes and your setbacks, and you divide that number by 160. It is that simple. We are here today fighting greed. These people care about filling their pockets and nothing else. The good people of Buckingham are fighting for their way of life, the phenomenal flora and fauna that Florida blesses us with, the availability of our resources like water and access within and to and from our community, the safety of our community members, and the posterity of our children. Pick people over profit, community over coin. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl, I can't read your last name. It starts with an S. F. Fisher. Fisher. Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Cheryl Fisher. I have been a Buckingham resident for 30 years, and I'm also a native Floridian who left Miami to get away from what we're starting to create here. I'm definitely against any more houses than the 160 that we are chokingly allowing. And I also want to thank Philippe and also everybody else who really did their research on this and put their heart and soul in laws, statutes, and things we should be following, and not just, again, the almighty dollar like she just said. My kids grew up here. My daughter loved it so much she actually just bought a lot, a 1-acre lot to build here. So things are changing, and we don't want it like that. And it's just very frustrating that we keep showing up and showing up and showing up for the same thing over and over and over again, and nothing has changed, really, basically. In fact, I think it's gotten worse. So I implore you guys to help us keep our way of life in the way we want to raise our kids and help the environment, keep the water flow correct, keep the pollution down, the light pollution, the noise pollution. It all affects our way of life. And this is the gem. When people come visit me in Buckingham, they're like, we never knew this place existed. They come from South Fort Myers. They're like, wow, this is awesome. Nobody knows because it's a very well-kept secret. And it's very controlled because we have fought tooth and nail, many of these people, for many more years than before I came here, to protect our way of life. So we implore you to do that. One thing I would like to address, I don't know if they've never really addressed that intersection from River Grove to the main thing. It's going to be very dangerous. We almost got in a head-on collision a week ago because people were passing, just trying to get out of our neighborhood. Now we're going to have to fight traffic coming the other way. So I really would like that to be addressed as a major safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Campbell? Keith Campbell?
Thank you for your time. Like many people before me spoke, I agree with all of it. Some things that's not being touched on, though, is especially we're hearing in the news a lot lately, is about the wildlife. If this plan goes through with 258 homes, you're cutting off that path of wildlife from the south to the north. And just over the weekend, they talked about how the Panthers are trying to make a comeback. That path road finally let one panther get through to the north side of the Okeechobee. So if you decide to let these people develop the 258 homes, you're literally just going to put an end to the wildlife that's already being moved from the south. Look at Golden Gate. People got bears showing up in their pools. We don't need that. Let the wildlife continue to live. Let us keep our rural community. 17 years ago, the people of Buckingham agreed to allow 160 homes in their community. Stop the greed. He had 17 years to build his community. He could have made all his money back then. But now, because he feels he's losing money, he wants to come in there and he wants to be greedy and get more homes. It's not fair to us. It's not fair to the people that have been out here for 50 years preserving this property. And like Cheryl said, I come from a city up north. I moved to Cape Coral because I wanted the neighborhood community. Cape Coral is now overgrown. People are on top of one another. I moved out here because I want peace. I want to be able to live on my land and enjoy it. Same with the people that come and visit me. You guys put a recommendation on one of your emails to us that you say around 200 homes. I think today that we've proven 134 should really be in there. We've already agreed to 160. I think we need to stay at 160. I came today saying I was okay with the 200, but I got to say the 160, that's where it needs to be. 17 years ago, that was agreed upon by all parties. We're not the ones being greedy. We're here to preserve what we already had, and we gave in at 160. I asked that you keep that same recommendation. And in the 3 meetings I've been to, every time they've been asked, what are you willing to go down to? Today is the first time I heard they're going to go down to 10 homes less. That's just greed by a developer. This isn't what Buckingham's about. You want to develop? Go to Miami. Go to Tampa. There's plenty of more land out there. Sell your land here because we'll be more than happy to buy it back. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Lauren Hunt. Julie Ward. Oh, you're Lauren Hunt.
How are you today?
Fine. Thank you for coming.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad to be here. So I'm excited to be here, and I was here last time with the commissioners, and I had prepared a little speech, but before I do that, I wanted to touch on a couple of points that were brought up this morning. One was from Ms. Sabin, comparing the 5 homes that have what she called comparable lot sizes, and she had stated that she wanted things to be inclusive. She drove that point home by highlighting the definition of reciprocity. And the thing about Google these days is that you can pick and choose which definition best suits your point. And Ms. Sabin had noted she used the Britannica definition. That caught my eye. So I thought, well, how many different definitions can there be? So I Googled it back there myself. Her definition stated to allow others to have the same rights. When I Googled it, other definitions in reciprocity said the Oxford definition, the practice of exchanging things with mutual beneficial for others. Mutually beneficial. That's what our community here is asking for today. We're asking for things to be beneficial to both parties, as many have stated with prior agreements that were made. There's a massive difference by highlighting 5 homes, the oldest built that she noted back almost 70 years ago. And she was stating that things needed to be the same because those 5 homes, were already there. So if you were to argue that your point was to build the same parameters of homes that were built 70 years ago, Well, they didn't have to follow the same rules that we do today. There's new building codes, there's all kinds of codes, so you can't compare something that was built 70 years ago to today and say, I want things to be the same as they were right there. So if you were to try to compare those same homes built 70 years ago to homes built today, it would be like comparing building a supercar to a horse and buggy and say, well, they both move, so therefore they both have to follow the same rules. And I think everyone would say that's kind of an outrageous comparison, and it's not a comparison at all. And I would agree, right? Because something built 70 years ago isn't going to be the same as something built today. And so I think that to utilize that and drive that point home is rather ridiculous on the opposition's part. Not to mention that she's only highlighting 5 homes, right? They're looking to build almost 200 homes. So again, there's no true comparison there. The commissioners agreed with the community that this proposed plan does not meet the cohesive needs of the community. And I very much appreciate how Commissioner Pendergrass went against the grain of everyone else in that meeting and siding with us in the community, stating that this proposed piece needed to be more cohesive. And in order to create cohesiveness, the lot sizes needed to be greatly increased, and as well as creating larger setbacks. As you mentioned, Madam Hearing Examiner, the commissioners wanted to see extremely larger lot sizes and larger setbacks, and one of the points that was made by Commissioner Pendergrass, which I think you mentioned today as well, that there was only a 5-foot setback somewhere, and that's rather ridiculous in comparison to what we're asking for. The easements, as another gentleman mentioned, should not be included in the lot size. The former gentleman had mentioned how the net size of homes should be required, such as in Horse Creek. I agree with that we shouldn't be using easements as part of the overall lot size. That's not a true indication of the actual lot size. If I were to build my own house in Buckingham rural community, 5-foot setbacks are not acceptable per building code. A single family dwelling setback has to be a minimum of 15 feet. And so if we're talking about rural community and the development within that, and the opposition saying, well, we want things to be the same, right? Then they should have to follow the same rules that we as single family residents have to follow when building in the Buckingham community. And if we did hold them to that standard of 15-foot setbacks on all sides, then we wouldn't be having this conversation today. So they already have it much easier than us as individuals do. So talking about cohesiveness, we're not even asking them to hold to our standards. We're just asking them to not be greedy. All right. Lost my point there. All right, so the proposed plan of 5-foot setbacks, as I mentioned, is not comparable. So if we went back to that definition of reciprocity that Ms. Sabin was talking about, where she stated equal rights for all, then both the developments and individual property owners within the rural community should have to follow the same rules, which would require developments to abide by 15-foot setbacks. So again, we're not asking for much by increasing some lot sizes here per their plan. The increase in lot size was also mentioned that it was very, just briefly mentioned that it was due to the decrease in lake sizes today. And I wanted to highlight that because that was a huge selling point for the opposition in the previous earlier meetings that we've all attended. Utilizing things like multiple lakes was going to bring in agricultural elements, increasing wetlands and green space. And so now, in order for them to increase their lot size, they're actually taking away from the lake sizes, which then diminishes the validity of their prior statements on adding natural elements to the community. And I just love how that was just glazed over so eloquently that they didn't even want to highlight it this morning as to where they got that from. Overall, the opposition did not adhere to the request of the commissioners in the prior hearing. The commissioners asked for larger easements, which was not provided. The commissioners asked for larger lot sizes, which I believe they stated was an increase of 200 square feet, again, which came from the decrease in the lakes or a lake size. So again, in order to meet their new proposals, they're just decreasing the agricultural resources, which is why we're all here. We want to maintain and preserve that agricultural aspects the best we can, and their so-and-so called compromise of 10 homes only comes at the compromise of decreasing the agricultural resources that the community was asking for. The commissioners asked the owner and the opposition at the last meeting directly if they were willing to decrease the home sites, and after their deliberation, the owner declined. To me, that shows me that the owner and the opposition have no real intentions of compromising to meet the cohesive needs of the Buckingham rural community, which is very sad. The previous speaker talked about greed, and I couldn't agree more that it really just comes down to money, whether they made a bad business deal or they're just pure greedy. I'm not sure which it is. But I would like to ask, Madam Hearing Examiner, that you do everything in your power to hold the opposition accountable to the request that the commissioners made by increasing the lot sizes truly without taking away the agricultural implements. So my question to the opposition would be, without taking away agricultural elements through lakes, green space, and wetlands that were on the original proposed plan, how can you increase lot sizes, setbacks, and easements without taking away from the agricultural spaces? And if that can be done, I would like to see that. And if it can't, I would appreciate that clarity with them just coming forth and saying it without all the legal jargon of trying to, well, this
Well, it's already zoned RPD, so it's not agricultural, it's just vacant. Just, I need to put a point on that. Okay. So to ask them to do that in the context of this remand hearing isn't, or even before this remand hearing, it's already zoned RPD, so it's not ag, it's just vacant.
Okay. So their selling point to the community and to the council was that they were preserving and even actually improving current agricultural elements, and that they were utilizing things like wetlands and green space and flowways to enhance what's already there. That was a huge selling point on the meeting prior to the commissioners. And so if they are going to now diminish that, that really eliminates that whole entire point. So my question to them is, how are you going to decrease lot sizes, which was the request of the commissioners, without the compromising elements of the way of life of the rural community, which, like I said, they say should be cohesive?
Well, I'm gonna ask them to clarify that too as well, because my only understanding was they were adjusting the one lake adjacent to the power easement, and that's not really changing the other enhancements they're doing to make the curb appeal of this project less disruptive to the surrounding community. But if I misunderstood that, I'm gonna ask them to clarify that. My understanding was it was only the one lake that was shrunk to take care of that southeast corner. But if that was not the case, and you heard something I didn't, I'm gonna ask them to clarify that.
I could have misunderstood her.
Okay, well, I've done it before, so I appreciate you raising it.
Okay, thank you.
We'll get that clarified for both of us.
Okay, thank you.
Julie Ward. And after her is Edwin Yerndon. And then that's the last sheet I have, but if there's anybody here that didn't get an opportunity to fill out a sheet, I'll invite you to come to the podium. So don't worry if you didn't fill one out.
Hello, thank you for hearing us out. I very much appreciate it. I would suggest that we only compare developments within the preserve, and that the Buckingham 345 preserve is not within the preserve, so it does not fit in to this hearing today. This gentleman mentioned that there was some smaller lot sizes in an Orange River development. I'm not aware of that. So I would like to hear more about that. Who maintains the easement or the drainage way? I believe it's the county. Has the county been informed of the proposed drainage ways? Are they willing to work with the community for whatever the development is proposing? That's another question I have. The development team keeps mentioning that how this community is going to fit in with Buckingham Preserve. When I drive home, I drive past a herd of longhorn cattle. The other day, there was some young kid riding along Cemetery Road. Will this development allow for fruit trees, gardens, chickens? You know, what kind of, how, I don't see how this is going to fit. I hear about that they say that it's going to add to the flora and fauna of the area. I would like to see that zone where the panthers, what the panthers are using as protected. I'm not sure if that is something that can legally be done with the state of Florida. I know that our panthers are a gem, and we would hate to see any more lost. Also, there was a mention of the protected trees, the flora, the fauna, as mentioned before. And also the homes, it's been mentioned, because here I'm going last, that the homes were grandfathered in prior to the development of the Buckingham Preserve. So I don't think they can be mentioned in this hearing. And just to reiterate the feeling of Buckingham Preserve, I work in Fort Myers at all 4 hospitals for Lee Health. I'm willing to fight traffic to get to work and really to get back to my home. And when I pass that little Buckingham Preserve sign, I just breathe a sigh of relief that I'm home. My family lives, my son, I won't take up too much more time, but my son and his wife and grandson live off of Colonial. They choose to live there. They want to live in the city. I mentioned a home going up for sale on my street, and my daughter-in-law said, "Oh no, I can't deal with all those no-see-ums." But anyway, people live where they want to live. Like, they want to live in the city. I want to live where there's a little bit of breathing space. And I guess that's what I have to share today. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Edwin Yernden. Thank you for your patience. Why, and also one of the last speakers.
Well, I'm Edwin Yerden. I'm not a speaker. I'm not a politician. I'm a Buckingham plowboy, and I've been there since '66, and I've seen a whole lot of changes. And just a couple questions. Is this going to be our last hearing? Are we going to get to have another say before the final vote?
There will be one more hearing after this, at least one more hearing after this. That'll be before the Board of County Commissioners, who will be making perhaps a final decision at that hearing. And that'll happen sometime in August or September, I'm thinking.
Okay.
Depending on where staff stands on this, needing more time to look at the application.
All right. And as far as the wetlands goes, the wetlands are not what they used to be. Water only flows through there 2 or 3 months out of the year at the most, except for storms and stuff. And you're putting a 60-foot wide swale through there. The county's going to have to maintain. They're going to have to put trees in there every 10 feet or whatever the law requires. And they're putting in 7 wells with probably injections, and they're going to have to pump our water to take care of all these trees and all this buffer stuff. Because if you look now, it's a dead cow pasture. And we're, already having well problems. We had problems when Veranda came in. We had problems when You know, Horse Creek didn't phase us much because that's well planned. But we're having lots of problems with the wells, and my neighbors are getting new wells put in as of now, and this 7 lakes is going to make a big difference. And I've been a surveyor for over 25 years, land surveyor, and you're putting houses in 5 feet apart. Is that to the eave or to the wall line? Because you can't even get a mower between the AC pads if it's 5 feet to the side of the house, because you still have a 4-foot pad for your pool equipment and your air conditioner and whatever you have on the side of your house. And they won't even get lawnmowers between it to the backyard, and you know, or between the sides of the house. And it's 120 acres plus or minus. By the time you take out the lakes, the roads, the drainage, you're looking at 60 acres. You know, why couldn't you put half-acre lots or acre lots and get $700,000, $800,000 for them instead of quarter-acre lots getting $225,000? You know, where that's just an example. But the flow zone, I don't know, the flood zone, I mean, has been raised at my place. I don't know if it has there, but there is a sheet flow factor, especially the people living south of there. The water's got to flow to the north during hurricanes and major storms, and we're not allowed to raise our property. We're not allowed to raise our driveways. And is that going to be a factor? I mean, a 60-foot drainage well ain't going to cover all the property up in Happy Bull Farms and all of the stuff south of them. It's just stuff like that I would like to, you know, see more of during these meetings when we have all the experts here. And that's it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else whose name I didn't call that's present would like to speak? Okay.
Good morning, I'm Kathleen Patchett, and I think I did fill out a form this morning, and I had spoken at previous ones.
Okay.
But anyhow.
And what was your name?
Kathleen Patchett, or maybe I put Kathy.
Okay, so I may have called your name, is what you're saying? You filled out a form?
I did fill out a form, but I hadn't heard my name. But
Okay. Well, maybe you can give me another one when you're done speaking.
okay,
How's that?
all right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I know that we can't stop development, but let's stop at the 160 that's already been here. We don't want overdevelopment in an area that is not really able to take the increase. Maybe in another part of town, when you're able to increase the size of roadways, you can, but I just had the fortune of going to watch my son's dog. I live in the River Grove Estates that's directly straight across from their entrance. I left at 7 o'clock in the morning. I had to make a left-hand turn onto Orange River Boulevard. It took, I can't tell you, I don't know how long it took me to make a left-hand turn because I went down and I had to go down Buckingham and down Cemetery. The traffic was bumper to bumper for 3.3 miles. This is not Buckingham traffic. This is cars coming from Lehigh. That has to be addressed. If we cannot widen Orange River Boulevard, I don't know how we can put 258 more homes in there. Well, I was only able to make a left after some kind person slowed down, and now to my right, there's also traffic because they're using that to either go to Staley and go down to Luckett to get on 75 or continue on Orange River Boulevard to turn up and get on 75 on Palm Beach Boulevard. Again, it's a terrible, I don't know, now I'm gonna have to come out and I'll have to make, and I got a car right across the way that's gonna also be trying to come and make it either into that line of traffic at 7 o'clock in the morning. You know, later in the day is better, but, you know, a dog can only be left for so long at night. So I had to go there then for 2 days in a row. This was not just one freak accident. This was 2 days, a Thursday and a Friday. So, you know, I moved to Buckingham. I had lived in New York City, and I also then moved to Pembroke Pines. I looked at 32 homes in 3 days. As a realtor, I put her to the test. But after looking at all over Fort Myers, I settled on my home in Buckingham. I've lived here since September of '95. I picked it because of the feel of coming there. So obviously my way of life has changed. I used to work at Gulf Coast, and before that at Southwest. I would go into the city, I would do my stuff, I would deal with it, but coming home, you just got that relaxing feeling when you get into that area. You know, like I said, essentially the bottom line, you know, larger lots for the 160 homes are desirable. I'm sure all our realtors here know that people love it. I believe I just got a flyer in the mail that 1 acre lot on River Grove Lane that leads back sold for $120,000 for an acre. And it was not on the market for that long. So property is desirable. So if we could just keep it down, you know, again, the infrastructure, I don't know if it's there with, you know, services for our fire. Schools, I know, are already overwhelmed. I mean, so let's just keep all this in mind, and thank you for hearing us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Can we add a comment? So before?
If you've already spoken, that's it, one time.
Hi, I had spoke before. My name's Pam Chaplow.
All right, did you speak before today? Oh, one time only.
No, I mean, I haven't spoke today.
Okay.
I have not spoke today, but I spoke at the prior meetings.
Okay, so what's your name?
Pam Chaplow.
Did you get that?
Chaplow.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I live in the Homestead Lane Willis subdivision area that this community will be our neighbor. And I don't fault the developer for wanting to do it. That piece of property is beautiful and it's sought after. There's a reason why everybody is fighting to get into Buckingham, is because it's the last of this little piece of heaven. And Lee County, I think, feels proud that they have this preserve. It's a draw for them. It makes them unique to other counties. So with that being said, being compatible, I really did, today was kind of the first time that I had really understood about the 345, Buckingham 345, and I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around that being used as a comparison. Certainly if you said Horse Creek was used as a comparison, it would make sense. It's logical, it just makes sense. It's a good comparison. I mean, for market values, for everything, and the fact that it's actually in the preserve. I also want to go on the record to say that I am very, very concerned about the flooding with the ditch. Every time I've spoke, I've always voiced my concern about this. We went through Irma, we went through Ian, we went through the 100-year flood. I had spoke with the Director of Emergency Management. I've talked to the county water management. And one concern that always comes up is the fact that this ditch system, which would, as my understanding is, would be maintained by the county. When I contacted the county about it, I asked them about the north and south ditches. So, I mean, even if you make this one small property, the water flow, unless it's maintained north and south of it, it's gonna fail. And obviously, if you live in that area and you have or could be affected by it, it's a grave concern. So, in investigating the ditch system, my question for the county would be, have all those ditch systems been checked to make sure they are flowing correctly and they are meeting the standard? That would be my first question. And second was, is this ditch system going to be able to support if the current system right now, which I see from just 12 years living on that road, that it has failed because we got flooded, and that how adding this is going to help. I know residents of the Willis subdivision and on Homestead Lane, they've offered to go out and investigate the 2 ditch systems and this is one of the systems, And they said that I would never see that happen, where that you would go out and physically walk. There have been homeowners that they see a low spot and they fill it in, like any one of us did, because we don't want standing water. Unbeknownst to them, it's actually part of the sheet flow, where the sheet flow is supposed to go. It's the ditch system for the water to leave. So I just have got very serious concerns about making sure that whatever's done on that property, whether it be this proposed plan of whatever the proposed plan is, whatever goes in, is the flooding and how that's going to impact the residents, specifically in that Buckingham section. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close public input now, and I'm going back to staff and the applicant. Do you want to take a break to prepare? Do you want to respond?
I think we're prepared to go ahead and finish up.
Okay.
If you are, I don't know about staff. I know they previously wanted
No.
additional time to look at the.
No, we are
site
okay.
plan, so I don't know.
We don't need a break.
You don't need what?
Break.
You don't need a break. Okay, let's go.
Madam Hearing Examiner, for the record again, Richard Aiken. I'm going to ask Ms. Sapin to come up and address some of the specific points raised by a couple by staff and some by public during the input. We're going to do our best to answer their questions and focus on the comments relative to the issues on remand.
Hello again, Jennifer Sapin for the record. I want to start with discussing the lake decrease. That is the only change to that original master concept plan is the southeast corner of the project where the road was shifted up in just that small segment. I think we saw it earlier, maybe it was 7 lots or so.
Can we get the site plan back on?
Yes.
So you can point to that? That was my understanding, that that was the only lake that was going to be affected, but I think it would be helpful for the people in the audience that maybe weren't clear on that, for you to point out which lake will be reduced.
So this lake here, against the power FPL area, that lake was decreased by 4/10 of an acre. This road used to come down a little bit lower. It now is straight up so that this R2 lot area has gotten deeper, decreasing the size of this lake. And in general, we have a lot of water management on this site, so a reduction of 4/10 of an acre won't have much of an impact to the positive benefits of the water management system.
And is there any reductions to the preserve area pass-through flowway?
No, there are no changes on this plan from what was previously submitted, and we reviewed that, the benefits of the flowway.
2 lakes along the entrance, primary entrance onto Orange River Road, are they changed in any way?
No, they're unchanged.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we had a question of whether there is a wall proposed. We are not proposing a wall with this development, only natural landscaping. There's a question on easements in lots. There will be some easements in lots, and that is typical of development. Along the right-of-way, there will be a utility easement that runs parallel with the right-of-way, 10 feet into the lot. That's very standard for subdivision development. There will be drainage easements that connect from the road to the lake that run along the side lot line. That will make, in those areas, the side setbacks larger where that easement goes through, but portions of that drainage easement will be straddled on those lots. And again, that's very typical of residential development. The easements for the flowway, for maintenance, for lake maintenance, all of those will not be within the lots in accordance with the Land Development Code. No landscape buffers. While they're not typically in an easement, they will not be within any lots. The back of the lots that are against a preserve, those may have a rear drainage within the lots. That's to capture the rear drainage of the lot, the perimeter berm, and then convey it back into the system. But none of the preserve would be with easements within the preserve easements would be within the lot. So I think that answers that question. The next point, so there was a speaker who related this proposed development, the setbacks of this proposed development, to what could be developed on other single-family scattered lots in Buckingham. The big difference in the comparison there was the 5-foot side setbacks proposed here with the 7.5 or 10-foot setbacks that are required on the scattered lots throughout Buckingham. The large difference is the perimeter setback. So where the proposed development abuts off-site properties, the setbacks on the proposed plan with the flowway is 150 feet to 170 feet. So the comparison then is 150 compared to 10 and not 5 to 10 for the setbacks. The smaller setbacks are interior to the project, but the perimeter setbacks are much larger. There were some calculations backing out, subtracting out lakes, preserves, things like that, and the remaining development land and applying the 2 units per acre allowed by this future land use category. That is counter to clustering. Clustering is a planning concept where you locate the residential or the development into a smaller footprint, allowing other portions of the project to have more regional benefits. Of course, in this proposed plan, the perimeter conveyance, the water management system, and the preserve provide all those benefits, allowing the clustering. And clustering is specifically noted in the Buckingham plan in policy 2.1.5. Speaking of side setbacks, I did want to point out in the Buckingham 345 plan that staff has used to make the comparison of an acceptable plan. I do want to point out that all of the side setbacks for even the larger homes in there have a 5-foot side setback. So those lots that are along the Buckingham or the rural community preserve for that project, those homes would be 10 feet apart with the 5-foot side setbacks. And to answer the question, yes, setbacks are measured to structures, roof overhangs. There's tolerance of how much the roof overhang can be in a setback, but the measurement is to the structure. There were some questions on the 5 lots that were brought up that I compared to. There was 2 reasons for that, and they were selected as the smaller lots because that was what the exercise was, to see whether there were lots smaller and similar to what we are proposing. And it showed that there are existing in the area, and they are older lots, and we brought up when they were brought into place. And the reason we did that, because Objective 20.4, it speaks to protection of historic rural character.
So in all of the Buckingham community, inside the preserve and outside, there was only 5 lots that were the same size or smaller than what you're proposing?
I did not analyze all of the community. I was more focused on this area. And if you remember in the presentation from last time, this western edge of the planning community of Buckingham is very unlike the other areas of Buckingham. With the recycling facility and the FPL substation on either sides of this property, the northwest corner has historically had larger densities of future land use and uses the recycling facility, which is incompatible in the rural community preserve now. So I kept the focus of comparison and compatibility to that area. Geography at some point does matter for compatibility. We're not looking at the lot size of something in Tennessee. So at some point, proximity and geography does matter. So that's why I just kept it to that 1,500.
All right, I was surprised by that, given the board's focus on lot sizes and dimensions in general, that you would limit it in that way, given the direction of the board. But I understand what you're saying now.
Well, and again, it was also to see if historically there had been a building over time where larger lots have been developed next to smaller lots. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up was with staff and Land Development Code 10328A. I understand that we'll work together on that, but I wanted to point out that 20-foot easement on either side is only required when when the existing water course is in excess of 50 feet wide. This existing water course is 30 feet wide. The boundary survey that's included with the submittal package shows the top of bank, and it pretty much follows exactly that 30-foot easement now. So we believe the land development code would only require a 20-foot on one side and not two. But we'll work through that as we move forward. I think that's all I had, unless you had questions, or Richard, did you have questions of me?
I don't have any questions of you.
Do you have any for me? Thank you.
No, I'm fine. I'm ready for the next witness.
Again, Carl Baraka for the record. I noted that there were concerns of flooding from Irma and other observations, and that's consistent with the Southern Lee County Flood Control Mitigation Plan, which I mentioned earlier. It's important to understand that this project right now is governed by the existing zoning and this existing master concept plan, which requires a 40-foot flowway. In my professional opinion, either of the proposed plans, whether it be the alternate plan with a 60-foot drainage easement or the original flowway plan meandering on the outside, would be a significant improvement over the current approved plan, and that would allow the county or whoever comes in to implement the mitigation plan to provide upstream and downstream conveyance improvements, which would then address some of the flooding problems. So again, without either of these two plans, I believe the future of that area and the drainage of the area will be restricted. Finally, to address Mr. Murray's question about elevations, I can't say specifically without looking at the exact elevations, but what I can say is I've seen, looking at the documents, that the difference in elevation occurred when the datum in Lee County changed from NGVD to NAVD, which is about a 1.2 foot difference. So that's what I suspect he's referring to. That's all I have for you today.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Hearing Examiner, if you don't have any other specific questions, I have a brief conclusion to walk through.
Okay, well, before you do that, let's find out what staff has to say.
Perfect. And I guess I will say that I think I've told this, if there's a desire to leave the record open to try to work on things, we can do that. I know that they also talked about potentially needing some additional time, and I told them before, and I'll say it again, if that's what they need, that's acceptable to us.
Right, and I don't think it's something that we require additional testimony on. Apparently, it's at some technicality with the dimensions of the drawings that you have to, staff has to have the confidence that engineering-wise, that's gonna work. And I don't mind leaving the record open for that if staff is requesting that, and then we just need to determine how long they need to comfortably review that. So let's find out, and then you can make some concluding remarks.
Very good.
Well, this site plan that's shown right now, we are familiar with that. We don't need much time for this. And that's our preferred plan because we worked over a year with the applicant to get that enhancement to the wetlands and enhancement to the drainage. And they are proposing minor changes, which are, we can review it real quick. That's not a problem. And our recommendation would be approval of this master concept plan with the development regulations proposed by staff. The other master concept plan that they showed this morning, we need a little bit of time. I would say maybe 4 weeks to review and see if the flowway is gonna work and everything else. And also we have to draft some conditions because the site plan is gonna be different, so it's gonna require different conditions. We would need probably a 4-week time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It was the exhibit, hang on, I'll give you the exhibit number. It's the new master concept plan that was submitted by the applicant. And the date of that plan is, let's see, 5/29/23. Nope, that's not it, sorry. It's labeled Master Concept Plan dated 5/4/22. Last revision. And it says sheet number 2. And basically, this site plan is very similar to the original master concept plan from the prior hearing. It creates a separate tract R-2 where they create larger lot size in that area. And there's some other modifications to it, but that's the description of the plan that they're referring to, as opposed to the alternative master concept plan that replicates the swale that divides the property.
All right, so would you like me to proceed with my concluding remarks, or do we want to discuss the staff's request for additional time to review the alternate plan?
They're asking for 30 days. We can give them until end of business, June 30th. And we'll close the written record at that time.
That's acceptable to the applicant.
Okay, and then if you can prepare some kind of memorandum to my office, if you have additional remarks, and I understand your support is for this initial alternate, not the alternate, but the new master concept plan, but if that should change based on your closer examination of this alternative plan, you can certainly let me know in an email, a joint email. I understand the public's remarks. That's not going to be changed by this alternative plan and the dimensions of this middle swale, so that's...
We may be able to draft 2 sets of conditions, one for the master concept plan and one for the alternate master concept plan.
All right, so is 30 days going to be sufficient for that?
We will make it work.
If you require an extension, please file a request with my office. But we'll say the written record is open until June 30th, end of business, to include staff's support or objection to the alternative master concept plan and recommended conditions for the new master concept plan and the alternative master concept plan. Okay.
May I proceed? All right. Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. So the discussion in this matter examined, and I know that the board on remand asked us to look at lot sizes as one of the issues, and we did our best to look at some lot sizes in the surrounding area. I think one of the difficulties and one of the challenges in comparing lot sizes and comparing the lot sizes in surrounding areas to this property is the unique fact that this property is not in the Rural Community Preserve, as you heard in the very first hearing, all right? The Buckingham 345 project that staff identified, we did, after they identified it, we compared the lot sizes, the setbacks in the Buckingham 345 project, which, like this project, does abut the Rural Community Preserve. I want to point out one more time that the lot sizes, or I'm sorry, the setbacks in the Buckingham 345 project are 5 feet, and that's for all of the lots in that project, whether they are the lots around the perimeter or interior. In our supplemental plan, or I'm sorry, in our alternate plan that we've submitted here, we've asked for 10-foot setbacks along the perimeter and 5 foot in the interior lots. So it would be greater than those in the Buckingham 345 project. For reference, the approved setbacks for the approved 160 units is 7.5 feet. So it's only 2.5 feet of difference with regard to what the original request was, which was for 5 feet as part of the original application in the original site plan. When we designed this plan, there was a discussion amongst the team here, and I'll tell you that the effort was made to put together a good plan, to put together a plan that met the requirements of the Land Development Code, that was consistent with the Lee County Comprehensive Plan, that provided for some environmental enhancements, even though that wasn't a requirement that we had to do, and to not ask for any deviations unless we absolutely had to, because we understood that there would likely be opposition from the public on this. And so the goal was to put together a plan that we thought would benefit the community from a water quality standpoint, benefit from an environmental enhancement, and all of those types of things. And that's what we presented. We understand that that was met with some opposition, and that the board asked us to go back and look at it. So we did, and we responded to what staff indicated and raised in the supplemental staff report. Taking into consideration the supplemental staff report, the initial staff report, the record at this point in time still doesn't contain any competent substantial evidence to find that the original plan that we submitted the first time around with the amendments here today is inconsistent or incompatible with either the Land Development Code or the Lee County Comprehensive Plan. There is no basis to make that finding based upon the evidence in the record. We have provided an analysis of the original plan with regard to the remand issues, and we believe that it remains consistent. The supplemental staff report does not reevaluate the original plan with regard to the issues on remand, specifically the setbacks, the lot sizes, and policy 5.1.5. It makes alternative suggestions, which is likely consistent with 2-6, but it doesn't make any new conclusions with regard to the original plan. The initial staff report concluded that the application was consistent, and we believe that shouldn't be disturbed. There is no conclusion that the original plan is inconsistent with the Lee Plan or the Land Development Code in the supplemental staff report or in the original staff report. In fact, the only conclusion that remains in the record is that it was consistent and remains consistent. The supplemental report makes suggestions as to how the site plan could be more compatible with the surrounding rural community preserve, and as you've heard, it proposes a number of changes. They talk about how the plan could provide additional assurances of compatibility with the rural community preserve. The issue that we take with this, or the applicant takes with this, is that the Lee Plan and the Land Development Code require compliance. We've already demonstrated compliance. They don't speak to degrees of compliance. And while I understand that planning is an art, and so there are, to some degrees, discussions of compatibility, the finding was of compatibility. The evidence is of compatibility. There is no need to talk about additional assurances or additional compatibility. At some point in time, the exercise runs out of how compatible does it have to be. Either it's compatible or it's not. Either it's black or it's black. It's already been found to be compatible in this case, so additional assurances aren't required. It's not a requirement of the Land Development Code. It's not a requirement of the comprehensive plan. The staff report suggests that the changes that they propose in their staff report, supplemental staff report, would make the plan more consistent with the surrounding rural community preserve. And I think this is a little bit dangerous, and the point I want to make here is that requiring compatibility with the rural community preserve would be inconsistent with the Lee County Comprehensive Plan, and the reason for that is that this property is not in the rural community preserve future land use category. And it never has been, and we've heard about that. So requiring us to be compatible with a future land use category that we're not in would be inconsistent with or incompatible with the Lee County Comprehensive Plan. The property is not in the RCP, as you've heard, but there is Lee Plan Policy 20.1.6, which you heard about a lot during the first hearing in this matter, the first two hearings actually. Lee Plan Policy 20.1.6 specifically addresses properties that are adjacent to the rural community preserve and the requirements for those properties, what it must meet. It speaks to appropriate transitions, appropriate buffers, graduated increases in density as you move away. It doesn't talk about graduated increases in lot sizes. It doesn't talk about setbacks. It talks about none of those things. And this plan, the original plan that we submitted, was found to be consistent with Lee Plan Policy 20.1.6 because it is, and because we took painstaking efforts to make sure that it was, by using the buffers that are required in order to make it that way. And with regard to the issue of the graduated increases in density, the Lee Plan doesn't have fractional densities. It goes from 1 to 2. That is a graduated increase. That's what we have. There's 1 in the rural community preserve, and our property is in the future land use that allows for 2. So that's already been met. I next want to talk a little bit, well, and actually I do want to point out, I believe it was Mr. Philippe, he talked a little bit earlier about some of the other Lee Plan policies, and I think that apply to the rural community preserve. And I think looking at those is maybe somewhat instructive, but he specifically talked about policy 20.1.3, which does talk about lot sizes, but it specifically applies to the rural community preserve. I think that's instructive, especially when we look at policy 20.1.6 here, because it doesn't talk about lot sizes. It talks about graduated increases in density and buffers, whereas the rural community preserve policies do talk about lot sizes. I think it's instructive to say basically that there is no requirement for a lot size once you get outside of the rural community preserve. The Lee Plan has certain requirements for certain places like in the rural community preserve, but it does not for properties adjacent to. I think that is somewhat instructive to the issue here. I next want to talk about policy 5.1.5 because that is one of the issues that the board remanded for consideration, and I know we've heard a lot about it, but the policy provides that in the first sentence it requires the protection of, quote, existing and future residential areas from any encroachment of uses that are potentially destructive to the character and integrity of the residential environment, close quote. And I think that's important because it talks about a use. This project proposes a residential single-family use where one is already approved, as you pointed out earlier. The surrounding uses are residential single-family uses. The use, again, single-family residential, is not potentially destructive to the character and integrity of the adjacent residential environment because the uses are the same. It's a residential single-family use. And that's a point that we make in our response, but I think we are entirely consistent with a very plain and very objective reading of policy 5.1.5. Talks us to compatible uses. The uses are the same. Turning now to the alternative plan that we submitted, I just want to make a couple of brief comments, and I hope staff will take the time to review it, and we'll certainly work with them to do whatever we can to work through conditions. But that plan, basically what we were trying to do was take the recommendations that staff made in Buckingham 345 and put them into effect. Okay, you want larger lot sizes around the perimeter and some larger setbacks that the board wanted. We can do that. We need to rearrange some things, but we can certainly make that happen, and that was what we did. I believe that we've established here today that the alternative plan is consistent with both the Land Development Code and with the Lee County Comprehensive Plan. As you heard, the conveyance is not going to move. However, it will still be an improvement over what exists there today as far as capacity goes and the ability to convey the water from south to north in this situation. The perimeter lot sizes, as you heard, are going to be greater than or equal to those in the Buckingham 345 project. The perimeter lot setbacks are going to be greater than those in the Buckingham 345 project. All of those things I think are relevant for consideration, especially when we struggle to find a comparable project just because there aren't that many that are adjacent to the rural community preserve. In addition, the buffers around the project we will still continue to have enhanced buffers around the Orange River project, even with the alternative plan as compared to what's in the Buckingham 345 project. And we also are decreasing, giving up some density. And I understand that, maybe that's not enough, but we have offered to do that in order to try and get to a place where we were trying to assuage the concerns raised by staff in their initial staff report. So we would ask for a finding that both the original plan, especially as amended by our response to the supplemental staff report, and the alternative plan are consistent on the recommendation of approval of both of those. I'm happy to answer any further questions that you may have.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes this morning's hearing. The written record is going to be left open for staff to closely review the revised master concept plans that have been submitted, to produce a set of conditions for each master concept plan proposed. The applicant is going to correct the typo on the one master concept plan. That should be turned into me by end of business on June 30th. If you're not able to get it to me by then, please contact my office and we can arrange for an extension. Thank you everyone for coming today.